Hey guy, how are all of you beautiful people? Hope you all are doing great. And yeah, this is the next part of systematic Shinobi. Even with his eyes closed and not using his ocular abilities, Deki could literally feel the gazes on him after he pulled his little punch and snatch. Even Kankuro at his side was outright gaping at him for a few seconds before buckling down and getting back to his own test. It took him a few more minutes into the test to realize something though. I need to wait a full hour for this to end, he grimaced. A total waste of time. That was time he could be using for training. Sure, there were quite a few people around that he knew as well, but he couldn't exactly talk to them to pass the time, seeing as it was an exam after all and no talking was allowed between people. Why did he think taking these exams instead of just accepting his promotion was a good thing? Resisting the urge to sigh, Deki channeled chakra through his eyes and peered through his eyelids, idly letting his head loll back and forth as if bopping to a tune only he could hear. He was really just taking the time to examine everyone and see what they were up to. As it turned out, not a lot. Neji and Hinata he could see easily, had their Bakugan activated and were already copying answers down from someone else, possibly even from him. Sasuke had his Sharingan activated and it looked like he was copying the movements of a guy a few tables down from him. Gaara was using his Sandai, which was interesting, but nothing Deki could replicate himself. Honestly, the most interesting was probably Tenten. She'd somehow got a mirror onto the roof without anyone noticing and was manipulating it with ninja wire, hiding the wire in the flashes of light coming from the ceiling light bulbs above. Not only was she getting the answers for herself, she was manipulating the mirror for Lee to see up into as well. Lee was lucky Tenten was on his team, or he'd be up shit creek without a paddle like Naruto. Just then, 4 small rock walls rose up around the area where Naruto was at, blocking him and the 2 beside him from view. It caused quite the commotion, and 2 of the Chunin proctors quickly smashed the walls apart, only to reveal Naruto, a massive grin on his face, and the 2 guys beside him, both unconscious. Deki only managed to catch sight of 2 wisps of smoke and just barely thanks to his eyes behind the 2 unconscious examines. And with no proof Naruto did it, they couldn't deduct points from him either. Was that the Earth style barrier jutsu I showed Sasuke? Deki blinked. So Sasuke actually did teach it to Naruto. How the hell did he make 4 walls at once, he wondered for a moment. Shadow clones maybe. It was definitely shadow clones that knocked the 2 beside him out at the very least. Interesting, Naruto actually got the answers on his own merit because of a jutsu he'd shown Sasuke and offhandedly mentioned teaching to Naruto. That was new. And something he'd need to keep his eye out for. Naruto went stupidly far with a limited amount of jutsu under his belt. He got exponentially more threatening for each single jutsu he gained and played with to make a stupid amount of variations with. Also Naruto just totally copied what he did. Visual learner indeed. It probably helped that Naruto actually had the balls to go through with something like that in the first place as well. Probably a good thing he did as well, since he wasn't beside Hinata this time around. Still, now it was back to boredom. He couldn't even just send messages to Fu and chat with her to pass the time either. While nobody else could get the message of the wave transmission jutsu if he attuned it to her chakra, they'd still be able to sense his chakra, and he'd get pulled up for assumed cheating, maybe. There were others blatantly abusing chakra, but Ibuki specifically had his eyes on Deki. His eyes kept coming back to him and examining him. Why, he didn't know, probably to do with his blatant cheating and abusing of the rules, but either way he didn't want to push his luck. He didn't know if the guy was a sensei ninja or not. He was distracted for a moment by his seatmate calling out that he needed to go to the bathroom, and one of the proctors who had been silent up till now, standing up from where he was sitting and agreeing to take him. Daki's eyes sharpened behind his eyelids with interest. From Kankuro's fingers, thanks to his eyes, he could see strings of chakra traveling along to the Chunin. Who was not a Chunin at all, but rather a puppet in disguise. He already knew that of course, but his interest was piqued by the chakra strings themselves. So that's how you use them. Daki mused, watching keenly how the other boy manipulated his chakra to create them. He was compressing his chakra at the tenketsu in his fingertips, making it a near-tangible, physical thing. He could only see the strings thanks to his eyes, but now he had a very good idea on how they were created. Lowering one of his hands out of view, Daki focused chakra at the tip of his index finger and decided to try and copy him. It took a few seconds, but compressing his chakra at the tenketsu and forcing it out was quite easy. His training with chakra flow and creating elemental chakra made it a cinch actually. A thin strand of chakra extended out of his fingertip and flopped around uselessly like a wet, slimy noodle dangling from a tree branch during a windy day. Well, he had the technique down at least. He just had to train with it to get proper control with it, that was all. He already had a good idea of how it worked by sticking to and controlling things as well. He assumed it was an application of the surface walking technique. All right maggots, pencils down. Ibuki called out thunderously. Bang on the second the clock at the front of the classroom hit 5. Turn your test papers over, it's time for the 10th question. A wide, malicious grin spread across his face and he looked all around the room, making sure everyone's attention was on him. Now, the 10th question has some special rules, very special rules, he said before pausing, letting a tense silence build up before continuing. Simply speaking, you can choose to leave right now, but if you decide to stay and take the 10th question, if you get it wrong, you fail and so do your teammates. If you leave, your teammates have to go with you. It's all or nothing, especially since, if you fail the 10th question after deciding to stay, none of you will ever be allowed the chance to be promoted again. All around him, Daki could see many lock up in shock, go wide-eyed and more, a variety of shocked and horrified expressions being directed at the man. You can't do that. Someone near the front spluttered, voicing his complaints. Yeah, he's right. You're just a leaf ninja, you don't have the power. Another agreed, and moments later, there was a chorus of shouting and agreement from others spread throughout the room. Silence maggots! Ibuki roared, killing intent flooding the room and shutting them up instantly. Daki had to withhold a whistle. It was some pretty nasty killing intent the man had developed, though it didn't even come close to the mere presence Isabu gave off when he first met the Baijua. Your little peanut brains might not understand, but I have all the power here. All your leaders agreed to this the second they sent you here. This is my exam, and if you talk back to me one more time, every person who opens their mouth gets automatically stamped in the face with a big fat F for failure. And they shut up real quick at that, not a single one willing to open their mouths after that. The tension in the air was heavy as shit. Daki could even see one kunoichi trembling just in front of him. I'm sorry, she exclaimed, pushing up to her feet and looking around, presumably for her teammates, but I can't be stuck as a genin forever. Fail. Ibuki barked, now get out of here you trash. He jerked his thumb at the door, making the kunoichi and her two teammates trudge out sullenly. They were not the only ones. Bit by bit, over the period of a minute, more and more gave up and trudged out of the room like little bitches. Well, not many more will leave. After all, Naruto should be about to light a fire under their asses and get them motivated. More teams got up and left. The seconds ticked by. Naruto didn't speak up. In fact, a quick glance back at the blonde let Daki see that the blonde was smirking smugly, arms crossed, completely immune to the oppressive atmosphere within the air. Naruto's not speaking up. Daki's eyes went wide. Why? No wait, was it because of him? Naruto got all his answers this time around, thanks to the jutsu Sasuke got from Daki himself and Daki telling Naruto to cheat and working as an example for him to learn from. That meant. His eyes flickered to a few tables behind Naruto, where Sakura sat. The cute pink-haired girl was trembling, face pale, her eyes locked onto the back of Naruto himself. He pushed chakra into his eyes and focused on her, always acting like a fool who only knows one thing, Hokage, Hokage you always go on about. I'm sorry Naruto, that impossible dream of yours that means so much to you, I don't want to see it crushed. Her thoughts echoed through to his mind and Daki grimaced. Both Sasuke and Naruto were in front of her, so they couldn't see her either. She was totally dead set on giving up, though not for herself, or even Sasuke, but for Naruto, to protect his dream. His respect for the girl went up a notch. She was looking like a real 4 out of 10 now. But if he didn't do something, she was going to get them all disqualified. For a moment, the thought went through to let her. If they weren't in the examines, Orochimaru couldn't mark Sasuke. Only then he realized that nothing stopped him from just following Sasuke to his house and doing it then. He was already in the village. And if they didn't go through with this, they wouldn't get the training they did in the month leading up to the final round. They'd be vastly weaker. Daki himself would probably have to deal with Gaara. If that happened, there was literally nothing he could do to help out proper during the crush to avoid the Sun Dame dying. Not unless he full-on wanted to reveal everything in his hat and go full Isabu Baijua mode and wreck shit. And even then, it would make Naruto and Sasuke weaker overall for later, when shit really hit the fan. Fucking hell, such a little thing could cause so many damn ripples. Daki ground his teeth for a moment, before sighing and deciding to intervene himself. He placed his hand down out of view and concentrated, a rippling wave of chakra leaving his palm and spreading back through the room just as Sakura's arm began to raise. Calm down Sakura, it's a test, trust me, don't go giving up, you're better than that, he transmitted through the wave transmission jutsu. Sakura froze a split second later, eyes widening minutely before her head whipped from Naruto's back to look at him. She stared at him and he gave her a smirk, before winking and turning around. Daki, you're speaking in my head. Sakura's inner thoughts reached him. It's a jutsu I picked up and costs a lot of chakra, so just listen okay, he transmitted. Are you sure, she fretted. Don't worry, that nice and perky round ass of yours, Ibuki is talking shit, he doesn't have the power he's claiming he does, he's testing everyone's mettle here, basically, if you can't put your rank, a little thing like that on the line as a ninja, then you aren't qualified to be one, he told her. I see, wait, the hell do you mean perky round ass you pervert, she spluttered. His smirk grew and he glanced over his shoulder at her. Well, it's a nice ass and those spandex shorts you like to wear show it off pretty well, he transmitted once more, before cutting off his line to her thoughts. Her cheeks went as pink as her hair and those green eyes of hers glared at him. He turned back around and ignored her glare. Heh, worth it. Thankfully from there, things progressed much in the same way they had in the other timeline from what he remembered, Ibuki passing everyone who stuck around and explaining the point behind the 10th question, most getting riled up and pissed off, and then him taking off his bandana to show off his skull, wrought with scar tissue, burn marks and holes from outright screws being screwed into his head. It was a horrifying sight, much more horrifying in person, and Daki had to admit, the fact the man endured that kind of torture and escaped to come back in person, was worthy of admiration. Ibuki was a real Badis for sure. Not as Badis as Daki himself, but a Badis nonetheless. Actually, if he remembered right, it was Rokusho Aoi that tortured him like that before abandoning the village and joining the Hidden Rain. Daki made a mental note to torture that traitorous fuckhead and go full-on Tobirama on his ass if he ever found him, maybe shove the Raijin down his throat and electrocute him from the inside out while he was at it. He was broken from his thoughts by a speedy black blur smashing through the window, glass raining across the classroom. The black blur unraveled into a banner with white letters, while landing on her feet before it, was Anko Mitarashi, and damn what a body that lady had on her. The mesh under her open trench coat was a lot thicker than he thought it would be, so her skin underneath wasn't in full view, but it didn't hide any of her shape at all. He could easily make out every contour of her breasts despite the thickness of the mesh, and damn did she have some big titties. She even had Kuinai beaten out. You fools, this is no time to be celebrating. Anko barked, eyes narrowed into a furious glare. My name is Anko Mitarashi, the proctor for the second exam, now follow me. Nobody moved, just staring at the woman that appeared out of nowhere and started making demands. Daki mentally shrugged and stood up, time to get a move on. I could have sworn she said something about being sexy and single at some point, he thought. She was a lot more hardcore here, it seemed. Or was he just actually remembering wrong? As he got up, others took it as their cue and copied him. Hey, Ibuki, the hell is this? Anko glared at the bald first proctor. There's a full damn 26 teams left, you going easy on them or something? Ibuki shrugged and gave a snort. We've got a few interesting ones this time around. He replied vaguely, eyes meeting Daki's for a moment before looking away. Anko followed his gaze and met Daki's eyes as well, one eyebrow raising up. That's so. She grunted. How unladylike. Them tits though. Sakura had quite the stink eye for him when they all left the academy behind. And it probably wasn't helped by the fact that he was behind her the entire way. The pink-haired girl kept looking over her shoulder and scrunching her face up into a pouty glare, which was not at all intimidating. It was all the more amusing when taken into account that she was trying to subtly keep her arms crossed behind her back, with her palms hanging over her backside to hide it from view. Both because 1, her top already came down over her shorts, so unless it was really windy or she was pulling some acrobatic movements, it would block her spandex-clad booty from view. And second, her hands were much too small to hide the dump truck she had back there. Either way, it gave him a good little laugh. That may have incensed her a little bit more. Oh well. It didn't take long before they all arrived at Training Ground 44, a few stragglers taking a bit longer than the rest to make it, mostly foreign teams who didn't know the layout of the village well. The last to arrive being a certain grass team. Daki didn't even bother giving them any special attention. He already knew what he needed to know after all. Instead, he was much more interested in how unpredictable someone could be, by being utterly predictable. When Anko saw that everyone had arrived and began explaining the specifics of the second exam and the Forest of Death, Naruto decided to loudly run his mouth about how unafraid he was of the place. Leading to a familiar sequence of events, kunai slicing cheek, hot lady licking the blood from the cut from behind a second later, and a certain grass ninja creeping up to hand the kunai back, with their tongue. Maybe I should have bragged instead. Daki mused as he filled in the waiver he'd been handed by one of the Chunin proctor helpers. Sure, he'd have to downplay his abilities for it to go the same, but them tits though, and Anko had been pressing them right up against the back of the lucky blonde's head. Was that Naruto's plan all along? It would make sense, since he hadn't expected him to run his mouth when he hadn't at the end of the first exam. If so, he had to hand it to Naruto. He deserved a pat on the back for that move. He'd give him one later. He met the blonde's eye and gave him a thumbs up. Naruto gave him a confused look, before grinning right back at him and flashing him a thumbs up in return. Daki nodded, before looking away. His eyes drifted to the booth that had been set up in front of the Forest of Death, where each team would enter, hand over their waiver that had them consenting to the fact that Konoha was not going to be held accountable if they died a miserable and pathetic death in the forest and be given either an earth or heaven scroll. He hadn't really been paying attention to the teams entering and leaving, he'd be picking his target once everyone was ready. But his interest was definitely piqued by the team that made their way out at that second. Looking at them, they didn't seem all that impressive. A pair of dull-haired boys, one with grey hair, another with light lavender, one tall and thin, the other shorter than Daki and very pale, almost unhealthily so. It was the girl that grabbed his interest though. She looked to be a few years older than him, probably around 16 at the most, with fair skin and a dusting of freckles over the bridge of her nose, a pair of cute lavender eyes and brown hair tied up into a ponytail with 2 strands hanging over her forehead. She wore a pink blouse, with a turquoise and red patterned dress, which she filled out quite nicely, while a pair of pink chaps drew the eye to her long fair-skinned legs. She was cute for sure, and he liked her hairstyle a lot, like Anko's, but cuter, more peppy. It wasn't her looks that really drew him in though, it was that he recognized her, and the symbol on the headband around her forehead. She was from Hoshigakyo, the village hidden in the stars, and if he remembered right, she was the chick that ended up with a crush on Naruto. He remembered her specifically, because she was pretty standout in attitude, had been willing to stand against her village leader and all the gathered Shinobi of her village to stand up for her friends and Naruto and such. The mysterious peacock method, huh? Daki mused, pushing chakra into his eyes and examining the girl and her teammates. Their chakra was much more dense and powerful than most people here, well above the rank and file fodder. It came at a cost, of course. The girls' 2 teammates, their chakra was fluctuating pretty consistently, and damaging their coils. One of them even had their chakra itself growing so out of alignment it was forming patches of chakra on his skin that was damaging his body. The seal I've been working on for the Stone of Gelul might work on that meteorite as well, he mused. He'd designed it with the help of Isabu, specifically making his Baijua chakra harmful to him, to filter out any harmful properties and purify it into something beneficial. He put them out of mind for the moment as he was called over to the booth to grab his scroll. Anko looked up at him as he entered from where she was sitting, before an eyebrow raised. Well, look who it is, she smirked, if it ain't Mr. Special himself, the kid with the eyes of the Hokage himself. Ha, she knew him. Well, he supposed quite a few people would now. How many people know about me now because of this mess? He asked. Oh, a ton. Most of the top Jonin and Chunin were at the meeting where the Hokage put you up to take this exam by yourself, even a bunch of clan heads, Anko freely admitted, crossing her arms under that amazing bust of hers before looking him up and down. Gotta admit, not really sure what the big deal is, but I suppose I'll see if you're worth the hype through this exam. She mused, dismissively. Well, it wasn't like she'd ever seen him in action, and he was a Genin Corps member still, so he could understand the thought. It still grated on his pride though to have such a hot-ass bodacious babe of a woman dismiss him like that though. Actually, it grated in general. Genin sense thought the same, and we all know how that went. He shrugged, a smirk of his own appearing on his face. Anko blinked before she snorted, "Not really, that bitch has been right tight-lipped about what went down when she tested you. She pretty much just keeps repeating the same thing, that you're definitely good enough." The purple-haired beauty shook her head. "Honestly, the way she's acting, it's just like how she did when she got drunk stupid and let some idiot talk her into their bed." Daki blinked, and wasn't sure how to respond to that. "Oh, you've got to be kidding!" Anko face-palmed and groaned. Apparently that reaction of his was enough for her to infer enough. "That stupid slut fucked you, didn't she?" Wow, that was a lot of vitriol there. Weren't they supposed to be close friends or something, or was he misremembering something? "I mean, she told me not to tell anyone, but yeah." Daki shrugged, unable to stop the smirk on his face from growing with pride. "I wasn't interested in her little test for me at all. She was nothing to me. She got all huffy when I did though and decided to bet her body against me in her little test because she caught me checking her out, and I kicked her ass and had some fun with her." Since Anko already guessed, he didn't see any point in hiding it. The former apprentice of the snake Sannin burst out laughing. "Oh, that's amazing!" she guffawed, leaning over and slapping her knee in pure amusement. "This is the best thing I've heard in ages. She's been acting all haughty since she got promoted to full Jonin, and here she is getting fucked by some Genin kid. Are you not friends with her?" Daki found himself asking. Her pure amusement out of it was throwing him for a loop. Anko scoffed. "Me and her? As if we're comrades, but that's it. I'm not a fan of that haughty attitude of hers. That girl needs a reality check. She has no idea how stupidly strong the real monsters of this world are," she retorted, before grinning at him again. "I suppose you must have given her a bit of one, kid? I mean, if you count me beating her in less than a minute and then fucking her silly all night long until she passed out, then waking her up, making her suck my cock and then kicking her out so I could get back to my training as giving her a reality check." Daki rattled off, before shrugging his shoulders. "Then yeah, I gave her a real hard reality check." Damn, Anko huffed in amusement. This will be great to hold over her head the next time she acts all uppity and thinks she's better than most of us and on the same level as Kakashi of all people. He gave his word about not telling people so her reputation wouldn't get a black mark. He was only loose-lipped here because Anko guessed correctly, but he should probably make at least a token effort to defend his fuck buddy. "I mean, it wouldn't have changed all that much if you were in her place," Daki pointed out with a shrug. "I'd still kick your fine ass just the same as her, and I'd plow you silly just the same. I'd just enjoy it more." His eyes blatantly drifted to her large round breasts stretching out her mesh shirt. With her crossing her arms like that and squeezing them up, he could just about make out her skin underneath the thick mesh. "You think so?" Anko smirked at him, unbothered by the claim, or his ogling eyes. In fact, she tightened her crossed arms, pushing her breasts up even more for his gaze. "You're a real cocky brat, huh?" Hugely cocky, he shot back, baring his teeth at her challengingly. "Biggest queen I ever had by far, if the way she was squealing and shouting about how amazing my cock was, is anything to go by." The situation was sending blood rushing to his groin rapidly. He had to shift his hips a bit to make his dick harden down the length of his leg so it didn't tent out his pants like Manda had transformed into a giant spear. "Must be pretty big then if that slut says so, going by how many guys she's fucked." Anko shrugged and stood up, before blatantly reaching forward and cupping his crotch, whistling as she got a feel for what he was packing. "Well, you're not lying at all, huh kid? Pretty damn impressive." H's fingers twitched and he had to resist the desire to reach out and cup one of her breasts. You wanting the same treatment Genin got then? He raised a brow at her. Nah, I'm good. Anko shrugged, and just as suddenly, her hand was gone from his dick and she held a white-colored scroll up for him to take. I'll take your word for it. If you can give that haughty genjutsu bitch the fucking of her life, I don't doubt you could for me as well, seeing as I'm a virgin and all and have no experience in that department. But I'm not interested, waiver please. A shit-eating grin appeared on the woman's face. Daiki just stared at her. There was a lot to unpack there. For one, what a fucking tease. For two, Anko was a virgin. Going around dressed like that. Woodenly, he handed the waiver over to her and accepted the heaven scroll. What am I supposed to do with this? He deadpanned, gesturing to his crotch. Not my problem, kid. You should get a handle on your hormones. Anko shrugged. If it bothers you so much, just find a kunoichi in the forest and have your way with her, though keep it to the foreign ones, eh? That girl that left with her team before you, the star girl, she was pretty cute. Why not hunt her down and grab her? If you can beat a Jonin, Genin or not, you should have no problem taking her and her team down. Did she just tell him to go rape foreign kunoichi to get his rocks off? He left the booth a minute later, his heaven scroll stored in his Dimension 4 seal in a bit of a daze. He'd almost forgotten since returning with Isabu. Just how brutal a world this was. Despite the horny days Anko left him in, it didn't stop Daiki from scouring the gathered genin ready and waiting to take the exam with his eyes. And it didn't take him long to pick out his target. Not the star team though. No, rather, he found an Iwa team, comprising of 3 males, all older than him, each uniformed in states of red dress, a lot like the upper rank outfits that typical Iwa Chunin and Jonin tended to wear. The red drew his eyes like a bull and his horniness was forgotten, his crimson iris gleaming. They'll do, he grinned savagely. Especially since he could see they had an earth scroll. Perfect, not only could he blow off some steam by slaughtering those damn rock humpers, he could test out a little something he wanted to try out and get what he needed to pass the exam at the same time. It was a win, win, win for everybody. And by that, he meant him, and not them, because those fuckers didn't deserve to win anything. They were losers after all. Minutes later, they were directed to the gates around the training ground. Daiki made sure to get one right next to the Iwa team. And kept his eyes straight forward and set. And not long later, Anko announced the beginning of the exam, and every single team shot through the gates. They each had 5 days to pass the exam. Daiki wouldn't even need 2 hours. He turned and looked to his right in the direction of where the gate the Iwa team entered through, and easily found them with his eyes. With the sheer range on his gaze, he could see the entirety of the forest for the most part just by sweeping his gaze. If he had the 360-degree vision of the Bakugan as well, he could monitor the entire forest with his eyes literally closed. The tree branch he'd landed on after entering the forest splintered and fell apart as he took off with a body flicker, grin stretching his cheeks as he chased his prey. As he traveled, Daiki focused chakra into his eyes, and a shimmering red dust formed around him, spreading out from his iris, before rapidly submerging into his body. He completely hid his chakra signature. Now, not even a sensor ninja would be able to sense his chakra even if he was right behind them. It didn't take him long to catch up to his targets. They weren't on the move long for all after all. As soon as they had traveled far enough to reach a small clearing, they quickly jumped to the ground and formed a barrier of stone up over them, hiding them from view and protecting them at the same time, almost like a shell. Too bad for them, the Shinkyugen could see right through any solid object with ease. And as long as he could see something with his eyes, he could also hear anything within that sight. So what's the plan, Haruto? One of them asked. He was among two that were kneeled down looking to one of them specifically, the one who was taking the lead specifically. We'll keep it simple, the one he asked, Haruto replied, placing a finger on the ground. I memorized the chakra signatures of most of our competitors, so we can hunt them at our leisure, boys. The other one who hadn't spoken, an ugly, stout-looking fuck with a fat round nose and water eyes, grinned. We should go after one of those rookie tree hugger teams, he suggested. They had some real lookers, yeah. The first one nodded in agreement. Yeah, that Yamanaka was a real looker and her team looked super weak, right? He suggested. I'd prefer to get my hands on that proctor lady though. Anko, was it? Did you see the tits on that bitch? I'd love to see her act all cocky and full of shit like before after I got my hands on her. Not a bad idea, though I'd rather go for the team with that Hyuga bitch. Haruto sniggered and nodded. Couldn't see much through that jacket of hers, but sensei told me that Hyuga women are amazing in bed and always have big tits as well. He and his team got their hands on one of their branch members back in the Third War apparently, said it was the best pussy he ever had. All right, that's about enough out of you, trash. Daiki snorted in disgust, as if trash rock humpers deserved to ever get their hands on a Konoha beauty. With just a thought, the Kibar blades appeared in his hands, summoned from the Dimension 4 seal, and he flowed his lightning chakra through it. A pair of powerful crackling auras of lightning shimmered over the blades and Daiki pushed off the tree branch 100 feet above where he was observing. A split moment later, his blades carved through the earth dome like a pair of hot knives through butter. The dome shattered apart, and he was in amongst them before they even realized it. The right blade lashed out and sliced right through Haruto's arm, lopping it off at the shoulder. The idiot only had time for his eyes to widen and not even register the pain before his foot connected with his temple and smashed him hard, the Iwa ninja sent flying through the air from the blow. Haru, the one who wanted to get his hands on Ino, gaped in shock, but again, was too slow to do anything with the surprise attack. His left blade stabbed straight through his stomach and then lit him up like a Christmas tree. He screamed in agony, before going limp. He pulled his sword out and turned to the last, who had the sense to jump away from him. The stone Shinobi gaped at Daiki, before a furious snarl overtook his features. You bastard! He roared, running through hand seals, 8 of them in rapid succession, landing on the snake seal to end with, Earth-style, Stone Dragon Jutsu. The ground underneath their feet rumbled and broke apart, a large serpentine dragon made of stone shooting up from the crevice in the ground and shooting towards him rapidly. Daiki mentally admitted that the fact he could use a dragon-style jutsu was impressive. The elemental dragon techniques were all powerful upper-level B-rank techniques after all. It was just too bad for him. Daiki was his opponent. He heaved one of the Kibar blades over his shoulder and tossed it like a javelin at the approaching earth dragon. The blade pierced straight through the jutsu in the blink of an eye and pierced deep into the stomach of the Iwa Shinobi. He staggered back, gasping in pain, but remained on his feet. Only for, with a thought from Daiki, the blade to pull itself out of the wound and spin like a buzzsaw around him, slicing off his arms. He screamed in bloody agony. And then his legs. He screamed even louder. Before the blade shot back through the air to Daiki's hand. Damn it, damn it, damn it! The rock Genin roared, you damn leaf bee! He never got to finish as Daiki appeared at his side, a merciless grin on his face. Shut the fuck up, you rock-humping piece of trash! Daiki spat, cutting him off. The Kibar blades returned to his Dimension 4 seal with a thought, and he reached down and grasped the now limbless and dying Iwa Genin by the throat and lifted him up. That was some pretty nice jutsu you had there. I think I'll see about plucking them right out of that useless little miner head of yours. Daki's scarlet red eyes gleamed with malevolence. They were the perfect targets after all, to see just how far into the minds of others he could reach with his Daojutsu. When he was done, Daki found himself having to sit down. His head was absolutely killing him. Not my best idea, he grimaced, sitting atop the comatose body of the Iwa Genin, Haruto. He wasn't dead, yet. He may as well have been though, he'd kicked his body over to sit on his back for a reason. He was foaming at the mouth after all. As were the other two. Well, the limbless one had already bled out and died, but before he did, he'd foamed at the mouth as well. Let it be known, that breaching any further into someone's mind than their surface thoughts with his eyes, was not a gentle process. In fact, Daki was pretty sure he'd tore their consciousness apart. Super inefficient too, he grimaced. He'd gotten some of what he wanted, Earth-style ninjutsu and how to train the basics of Earth-nature chakra, but for the most part, he was just bombarded with their general lives. He didn't even find out anything he didn't already know about the hidden stone village itself. But the vast majority of the memories he ripped from their heads were absolutely useless to him and just formed together to give him the mother of all headaches. Though he did learn something interesting. This team of mini rock humpers. Their sensei was one of the shitheads who killed him originally. Hido Itsuki, part of the Hidden Stone's explosion core. A chuckle escaped Daki, soon transitioning into a full-bodied laughter that echoed ominously through the forest. I'll remember that name, he vowed. All manner of thoughts ran through his mind, all centered on revenge and how to make the man suffer. It was almost too bad this rock humper team was a full team of males. If there was a kunoichi amongst them, he might have taken Anko up on her advice. Well, no point hanging around here. Daki grimaced, standing up and ignoring his headache. He looked at the comatose, foaming-mouthed Haruto, before spitting on him and kicking him through the air. Trash, he said simply, before crossing his fingers together and forming a shadow clone. Then he held out his heaven scroll and the earth scroll that he'd looted from the three stupid useless weakling trash miners for his copy to take. The clone accepted them with a nod, and without saying a thing leapt into the trees and rushed towards the tower in the center of the forest. There was more he wanted to check out in the forest, but that was no reason why he shouldn't break the exam record of 4 hours before Gaara and his siblings and make it his bitch. With his clone gone to complete the exam for him, Daki idly looked around, his gaze sharpening with chakra and peering over the vast scope of the forest itself. He found Team 7 easily enough, and didn't see anyone within their range quite yet. He located the grass team easily enough as well, and it was easy to see the switch had taken place already just from the sheer amount of chakra the grass genin he'd observed before, now had. They weren't anywhere close to Sajuk and his team, but then, the exam had only been going on for about 20 minutes or so. Maybe I should go pay a visit to the star team, he wondered. Though, definitely not to follow Anko's advice. He wanted to absorb some of their chakra, especially from the guy who had so much of the star chakra it was physically seeping into his body and damaging him. He could stimulate the chakra itself, or even have Isabu do it and have no need to go for the star itself. The mysterious peacock method was very interesting. It was pretty set in what it could and could not do, but the chakra manifested with the technique was incredibly dense, a shroud that was physical and stronger than steel. It reminded him a lot of the Susanoo of the Uchiha clan's Mangekyo Sharingan. If he could learn to use that technique in conjunction with, say, Isabu's chakra cloak, it would work as armor for him as well, and then he could reverse it around to use his own chakra as armor in full Baijua mode. With his thoughts on that, he made his through the 3 Iwa bodies, looting them for all they were worth and absorbing every little bit of chakra they had in their bodies with the infinite armor. They were definitely dead now. But at least they were worth more now than they were in life as rock trash. With that done, he searched the forest with his eyes, searching for the star team. It's too bad I can't get my hands on a Susanoo of my own. Combining it with the mysterious peacock method would be insane, he mused. But the only Sharingan around now were either in Danza's possession or Obito's. Well, Sasuke and Itachi had Sharingan as well, but he wasn't going after their eyes. Honestly, he'd much prefer Shisui's eyes and Susanoo. That guy was awesome. But his eyes were gone, one in Itachi's possession, the other in Danza's, which meant he'd have to gank both of them to get both eyes for the Susanoo. Deki paused. Wait. Isn't Shisui's body in the Nakar River? Deki suddenly remembered. Sure, it would be in a terrible state having been down there for years now, and it didn't have his eyes anymore. But, Sami's corpse had long since lost its eyes among other things, and using enough life force his body had been restored to its prime, eyes regenerated and all. And he'd built up quite a decent amount of life force within the infinite armor since he got it. He hadn't even used any for himself yet. Of course, the eyes would be useless to him since he already had a much better Daojutsu than the Sharingan. Shinkyugen all the way. A seal could work though, he mused. Maybe one based on the 4 symbols seal, on his eyes themselves, or maybe on his face connected to his optical nerves. He'd seal the Sharingan into the Shinkyugen and make the Shinkyugen the Jinchuriki more or less of the Sharingan, allowing him to use the abilities of the Sharingan through the Shinkyugen as well. Yeah, that could work. And it would be simpler even than designing a seal to hold in a Baijua. It would probably take a while, at least a week or 2 even with clones helping with the process, since he'd need to alter the 4 symbol seal itself. Though, the seals he'd learned for absorbing chakra from the infinite armor and chakra armor would be a big help for linking the chakra of the eyes themselves. Yes, he liked this idea. Ki ha 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 ha. Laughter erupted from Deki. Yes. This he could work with. He could just imagine it now. Baijua mode and majestic attire, Susanoo and mysterious peacock method. With Isabu's absurdly durable shell plus them, few could ever hope to damage them. You know, you're sounding a bit like a villain now, and that crazy laughter in no way helps. Isabu deadpanned. Oh come on, I'm just happy. Deki protested, stopping his laughter. Oh, I know, I'm just saying, you shouldn't do that in public. Isabu replied. Greatness was always stared upon with jealousy, he supposed. And laughing like a crazy lunatic wouldn't attract hot chicks for sure. You didn't need to ruin my buzz though, Deki pouted. For that, I'm not telling you of my idea to make you way stronger. I already know though, I'm privy to your innermost thoughts. Isabu deadpanned. Stupid Badis giant epic turtle. Isabu snorted. Deki put him out of mind for now, and bit his thumb, drawing blood and running through hand seals, summoning jutsu. He had the best summons for this job anyway. While the original Deki was busy with his evil scientist shtick, his clone was making a beeline straight for the tower in the center of the forest. For all the time it took others to get there, Deki, having the scrolls needed and being able to see his destination, didn't take long to get there. And long before anyone else at that. He entered one of the many doors of the tower, closing the door behind him and finding himself in a wide-open spacious room, 2 doors on each side of the opposite wall, while in the middle a message sat on the wall. Without heaven. It was a fragmented message, and a hint for anyone who made it this far with both scrolls, to open them now. As he unrolled the scrolls and idly glanced at the seals engraved in them, before tossing them on the floor, Deki idly wondered who would be coming to see him to congratulate him on passing. There was a poof of smoke as the summoning matrix activated. He wasn't at all expecting the one who appeared though. A familiar elderly man, liver spots on his face, adorned with red and white robes and a kick-ass pointy hat. "Ah, Deki-kun," the sun dame greeted him with a smile. "I expected you to reach here first, I know, but not this quickly. 38 minutes since the exam started. I have to admit, I am impressed." For a moment, Deki just stared at the old man before sighing and shrugging. "Not really, I could have finished this in less than 10 minutes if I really wanted to," he admitted. He'd taken it kind of leisurely really. If he wanted to, he could have stolen another scroll from Anko and just made a beeline here. "Is that so?" The Hokage hummed lightly. "Well, be that as it may, you absolutely crushed the previous record of 4 hours by a landslide. Your name will go down in the history of the Chunin exams, I dare say." "Ha, sweet. Cool," he grinned lightly. "So, can I ask why you appeared, Hokage-sama?" "It is tradition for me to congratulate the first ones to pass the exam," the sun dame answered easily before lightly clicking his tongue. "Actually, Deki-kun, I dare say after what we've talked about in the past, that it's fine for you to drop the formality with me, right? I'd much prefer you to be comfortable around me." Deki raised an eyebrow at the man, before shrugging. "Sure, whatever you say, old man," he replied. In response, Sarutobi chuckled, and if Deki's ears weren't deceiving him, he heard fondness in his tone. "Ah, there's the real you," he noted, brash and straightforward, like Naruto-kun in that regard. "Nah, I'm way cooler than Naruto." Deki crossed his arms and retorted, "I have an epic turtle, he has a fox with bunny ears." Sarutobi raised a white eyebrow at him at his words, but didn't comment. "I have actually been meaning to ask, how has your situation with your new tenant going?" the old man asked. "Awesomely," Deki responded. "Sunbro is the best. He even taught me a bunch of water jutsu that his old host, Yagura, knew." "Sunbro?" The sun dame's second eyebrow raised and he chuckled as Deki shrugged. "Oh dearly departed father, I didn't think it could get worse. Can we go back to Isaburo instead?" Isabu groaned in his head. This host was clearly a mistake. Listening to their idiocy in multistereo with these clones is horrible. Deki ignored Isabu's melodramatics. He knew the turtle was just playing it up. "But yeah, it's going fine, you don't need to worry about it," Deki added. "Forgive me, an old man worries sometimes despite evidence pointing to no need of it. You are in a bit of an odd situation. There's never been a Jinchuriki like you to my knowledge." The old man apologized. "But enough of that, I'll take your word for it. There is something I wish to ask of you, here and now." Deki forced the grimace that wanted to surface on his face down. "And that would be?" "You already know." The old man smiled knowingly. "I've kept my distance and not brought it up, but the period leading up to the exam finals will be good time to make use of. Deki-kun, will you, or will you not, accept my offer to become a candidate for Hokage?" Damn it, he knew it was coming. "What do you mean by the period leading up to the exam finals?" he asked, deflecting. Sarutobi clearly knew what he was doing, but answered nonetheless. "You are powerful for your age, but without the power of the Sanbi, You don't even come close to the power and ability required of a Hokage, the old man explained. Being Hokage is not just about leading the village, but being the protector of the village as well, the main pillar that holds this village up on their shoulders. The two main qualities needed of a Hokage are love for this village and the strength to protect it. Not the leadership ability and intelligence. Daki couldn't help but question. While it would be preferable for them to have that as well, they are lesser needed than what I just listed. Advisors and those you trust can shoulder those responsibilities if needed. The Sundame shook his head. That is why, if you accept, I will personally oversee your training. But, do keep in mind, you will not become Hokage for years yet if you accept, so do not feel pressured by that. It was such a good deal, to be honest, on that front. Training from the professor himself, who like Kakashi was known to know over 1,000 jutsu, but unlike Kakashi, had mastered each and every single one. What if you die before I'm ready? Daki needed to ask. He wasn't an idiot. He'd looked up the laws of the village itself thoroughly after the old man had gave him the offer. If you pick me as your successor and train me as such, if I'm not ready for it and you die, I'll be thrust into the position. The Hokage's word was law in this village. If they chose a successor, then they were the next Hokage. Others like the daimyo only had a say in the next Hokage, if the Hokage themselves passed away without picking a successor. Which was the problem, because if things didn't go well, a month from now, this man would be dead. And if he accepted his proposition, Daki would be thrust into the position of Hokage. There's no need to worry about that, the Hokage chuckled lightly, waving off his concerns. While I am indeed old, I dare say I'm not close to dying any time soon yet, especially considering that old no monarchy is still going strong. That was not what he wanted to hear. The old man all but confirmed if he accepted, he'd be chosen as his successor and end up Hokage if the man died during the Konoha crush. Fuck. If I accept, will I be able to look at the stuff in the Forbidden Scroll? He asked. Yes, Sarutobi replied simply. Actually, you'll be required to, just in case some of the jutsu in there ever see the light of day and need to understand and combat them. Double fuck. Like, that was such an amazing fucking offer. It made it all the more tempting to take the old man up on said offer. Should I, he thought, his mind was racing with all the possibilities. To save the Hokage, he'd probably need to get involved in that fight somehow. Maybe get Jiraiya involved as well. He could free up Jiraiya with his own summons to deal with Orochimaru's, probably. But, getting involved in that fight, he would definitely have to use Isabu's power and would reveal his status as a Jinchuriki. Either way, the Akatsuki would learn of his status somehow if he really got involved fully in the crush. But, access to the Forbidden Scroll and personal teaching from the Sundame Hokage, the professor and third god of Shinobi himself. With his clones, it would amount to much more than just a mere month of training. If he pushed to using up to 50 clones a day for training, that could amount to nearly 4 years of ninjutsu and other discipline training under the man. That may make him more than a match for dealing with the Akatsuki, especially since he knew all of their abilities. Daki grit his teeth. Fuck it. He shouted, making the Sundame blink in surprise. I'll do it, old man, sign me up, I'll go full in. And if he did end up Hokage at the crush, he'd just train Naruto and foist the hat on him. Yeah, that'll work. Sarutobi chuckled. Well, a bit dramatic of you, but I'm glad to hear it, the old man mused. Very well, from now on, Daki-kun, you will be my student. We'll be beginning your training as soon as this secondary exam finishes. Sounds good, Daki grinned, punching his fists together. I've got a bunch of other jutsu to get down. It'll be quicker with your help. He had a bunch of wind jutsu to get down that Yagura knew of, and now the earth jutsu he yoinked from those rock humpus mines. That will be no problem, the old man nodded, though, I think you should dispel now, right Clone-kun? And let Deki know all of what we talked about. As expected, the old man Hokage knew he was a clone. Sure thing, Hokage-sensei. Deki grinned at the man, before doing just that and dispelling himself. The original Deki, after summoning one of the Chameleon clan and assigning them the fetch quest of finding and retrieving Shisui Uchiha's corpse for him, decided to go take a look at the team from the Hidden Star Village. He mostly kept his distance from them, just examining them from afar with his eyes and noting how they molded and used their chakra and memorizing the hand seals used. He noticed in interest, as they stopped atop a massive tree, overlooking a wide spacious clearing with a cave leading underground. It wasn't hard to see why they stopped, it was because there was a fight currently going in the middle of the clearing. It wasn't any Shinobi or Kunoichi fighting though. It was a massive bear, easily over 100 feet tall, facing off against a pair of much smaller, but still massive wolves. They were odd for wolves though. Easily 50 feet or so tall, with blue-gray and white fur, and black lion-like manes around their necks. Though, one of them had an extra bit to their mane that came up over their head like a spiky black mohawk. They were black mane wolves if he wasn't wrong. They were native to Fire Country, though, these ones were much bigger than the usual variety of them that were more akin to the size of normal wolves. Why the hell did every creature in the Forest of Death end up supersized? And it was odd in of itself that they were actually facing off against the much bigger bear. But, a single glance at the cave entrance and seeing underground with his eyes told him why. 4 much smaller wolves were hiding within the cave itself, out of sight. He said smaller, but they were still massive compared to normal wolves, a good 10 to 15 feet in height. Wolf pups he assumed, and the two fighting were the parents trying to protect them. Just then, a rush of memories streamed through his mind and Deki froze, that damn fucking clone. He snarled. He would have accepted the offer as well, since the clone was literally him, but blaming the clone itself made him feel better. Guess I really do need to speedrun shit now. Deki grimaced. He needed to get his hands on all the available power-ups he could and become one with the grind if he wanted things to go his way now. The roars of a humongous bear shook the air, while 2 giant wolves howled in defiance, and Deki sighed. Typical, just typical. And Orochimaru was already on the move as well, his attack on Team 7 commencing. Deki watched idly as thousands of feet away, Naruto was blown away from his teammates by a massively powerful squall of wind, sent spiraling through the air, deeper into the forest and was promptly swallowed by a gargantuan snake that would loom over even the 100-foot bear facing off against the 2 giant black-maned wolves. Why did the snake summons have so many huge-ass boss-sized members? Deki shook his head and put Team 7 out of mind for now. Orochimaru wasn't going to kill them, and he had a little bit of time anyway. His eyes drifted to the fight going on between 3 giant forest beasts. The male of the pair rushed the bear from the front, going for its neck, only for the bear to rear up on his hind legs, towering far above the wolf and slamming a razor-clawed paw into its cheek that bodily lifted the huge wolf up off the ground and smashed it through a massive tree that was easily 1,000 feet tall. That bear had some serious power to it. But, the wolves were cunning. Because the frontal attack distracted the bear, long enough for the female wolf to get behind it and sink her fangs into its lower back, where its spine would be. She was trying to paralyze the bear. The bear roared and swung around bodily, yet the wolf had latched her teeth into it so tightly that she was bodily picked up and swung around by the bear as it moved. Realizing it couldn't reach her with its arms, the bear thrashed around wildly, trying to dislodge the female wolf, only for the male wolf to come bounding back out of the forest where it had crashed through the massive tree and leap through the air, razor-sharp teeth glinting. The bear roared in pain as the male wolf gnawed into its side. But it seemed the bear wasn't stupid either. It gave up trying to dislodge the wolves right then and there before throwing itself back. The female wolf whined in pain as the bear crushed her under its bulk. Her teeth came free and the bear stood back up and swiped down with both massive paws, grabbing the male wolf by the head and ripping it free from the bear's side, blood spurting in great rivets through the air. The bear lifted the wolf up by the head, both massive paws clasped around its skull and squeezed. The wolf howled in agony. It was sad, but tactics, intelligence and superior numbers couldn't always bridge the gap to allow one to overcome raw unadulterated power. He could already see how this would go. The bear would crush the skull of the male wolf, killing it, leaving the female alone to fend the bear off. She would by easy pickings one-on-one, either killed or forced to flee and leaving the pups defenseless either way. This place was the law of the jungle. Honestly, this entire world thrived on that aspect. It was just how the world worked. Daki had long since accepted that, and become part of the cycle. It was a dog-eat-dog world. Yet he found himself leaping through the air powered by a shunshin all the same. He always was a dog lover. He shot into the air above the bear, before thrusting both hands up above him and firing off a pair of force palm jutsu from his hands, jettisoning him down through the air like a bullet. He threw himself into a forward spin, picking up a massive amount of momentum and came down atop the bear's skull with the most powerful knee strike he could muster. A massive cracking sound resounded through the air and the bear froze, its paws going limp and dropping the male wolf to the ground, it landing on its feet in a daze. A moment later, the titanic bear teetered on its feet, before collapsing sideways, eyes rolled up into the back of its skull, its sheer bulk making the ground rumble like a mini-earthquake went off. Standing atop the comatose, or possibly dead bear, Daki met the eyes of the giant male wolf that stared at him wide-eyed, shocked. Joined a moment later by the female, tenderly limping over to her mate and eyeing him warily. "You're welcome," Daki told them dryly, eyes glancing up into the tree line where the star team stared down at him absolutely wide-eyed. They promptly turned tail and fled. Daki made a shadow clone. The clone immediately shot off into the tree line after them. Daki eyed the pair of wolves, before sitting down on the bear's head cross-legged. Now that he looked at them, these wolves were kind of cool looking. When their pups grew up, they'd be a pack of 6 huge wolves of this size. Pulling a Kakashi and training these things to be ninken, that would be a hell of a power move. Especially since with their immense size, they'd be much more combat-able, and Pakin took on Jonin and shit in the other timeline. He didn't really need them for himself. But they could be a good gift for somebody and be a big help to him later through them becoming stronger. Who did he know that needed and wanted a summoning contract? Sasuke wouldn't need them, even if he didn't go to Orochimaru, he'd get his hands on the Hawk contract no doubt somehow, and the Uchiha had access to the Cat contract as well. Hanabi already had her tiger, though he made a mental note to hunt down some more for her, get her a whole pack of them. Hinata then. Or maybe Tenten. Yeah, Tenten wanted a contract, didn't she? Heck, he could probably pass the training of them on to her as well, since she had Guy as her sensei, and he'd be able to bug Kakashi into telling her how to train them into ninken. Daki spoke up, making the wolves tense up at his voice. It was kind of amusing. He held his hand up, and brought out one of the blank summoning contracts he'd made through clone labor. You know, I saved you guys here and now, but there's a bunch of these bears in this forest. What'll happen to you guys if you come across another one, I wonder? He almost felt like a skeevy car salesman. While the original Deki was making a deal, his clone was in hot pursuit of the star team. Well, he said pursuit, but they were much, much slower than him. So he sped right past them, getting in front of them and cutting them off. Hello again. Deki greeted them with a smile as they froze atop a branch before the one he was currently on, arms crossed and casually leaning against the middle of the tree. How did? The cute girl of the team, Hokuto, if he remembered her name right, froze and stared wide-eyed at him. I'm just that much faster than you guys. His smile turned into a grin. So you guys are from Hoshigakure? We are the short purple-haired boy he remembered Naruto meeting as well, confirmed. And you are Deki Yuria, right? He asked, hesitantly. Oh, you know of me. Deki's eyebrow raised in interest. We overheard the other Genin talking about you earlier during the first exam. He grimaced. We were hoping to avoid you actually. Smart of you. He praised lightly. And it was, of course. The mysterious peacock method was a pretty amazing technique, but it was useless if they couldn't even get it up in time to block any of his attacks or hit him at all. It was why the grind was the true be-all and end-all base to all Shinobi abilities. Without the physical ability to react in the first place, all jutsu and abilities were useless. At the end of the day, his eyes, his seals, his armor and all of his jutsu were mere supplementary support for the roaring power of his epic grind-enhanced muscles. Speak for yourself. The third of their team, the only Deki didn't recognize, snarled. He might be strong compared to others here, but compared to the power of our star chakra that all the villages covet, he's nothing. He clasped his hands together in a modified seal, index and pinky fingers extended and touching, forming a triangular shape, purple chakra flaring at his back like a powerful flame, and the UN-named star Genin gagged, eyes going wide with pain as suddenly, Deki's fist was buried in his solar plexus. He contorted around Deki's fist, before his wide eyes rolled up into the back of his head and he fell unconscious. Deki pulled his fist free and let the boy drop to the ground unconscious, before pinning his body under his foot. It all happened so fast, neither of the other two had a chance to even see him move before the boy was already falling. Stia! Hokuto gasped, but instead of rushing Deki, she smartly leaped backwards, her hands falling into the same hand seal, while the purple-haired boy leapt to Deki's other side and did the same, enclosing him in from both sides and forcing him to pick a target and go for them while the other could attack from behind. Deki didn't bother attacking either of them though. Instead, he activated the infinite armor on his shoulder and watched with interest as purple star chakra was drawn from the boy's body under his foot up into the mouth of the Isabu head armor. You're absorbing his chakra. Hokuto gaped at him. Something like that. Deki grinned at her, glancing her way. Thing is cute stuff, that nobody really covets, your little meteor thing. It's interesting and I could make use of your mysterious peacock method and plan to do so, but it's not all that great considering the drawbacks. He tilted his head, just in time to avoid a roaring flaming purple serpent of chakra aiming for the back of his skull. He of course didn't actually need to do so and was just showing off. He reached out and grabbed the serpent and pulled on it, hearing a yelp behind him. The purple-haired boy, who cunningly took advantage of him turning his attention to his female teammate, was pulled bodily through the air, and Deki spun around, delivering a knee strike to his stomach. The boy gagged from the blow, but remained conscious. Surprisingly, he was sturdier than his teammate, or at least had much more pain tolerance. The follow-up elbow to his skull though, smashed the boy into the ground before the chakra on his back could be formed into a shape to counter, and he smashed into the tree branch unconscious, just like his teammate. A moment later, glowing ethereal purple ropes of chakra launched at him while he was busy with his real target of the 3. 5 of them in total, aiming for his legs, arms and neck. As soon as the chakra was about to make contact with him though, the ropes lost form and broke down into raw chakra and was absorbed by his body armor. He directed the chakra into the infinite armor for safekeeping. Get away from them! Hokuto snarled at him. Daiki looked over his shoulder to see that her star chakra had formed into a winged cloak around her body and she shot towards him, shooting through the air like a bullet using the chakra wings. She punched out at him as she approached, the chakra coating her fist flaring out into a purple chakra claw, smaller, but akin to the ones he could use in his Jinchu Yuriki cloak, which was promptly devoured by the infinite armor. Hokuto's eyes widened and she flipped around just before she reached him, and lashed out with a flying kick aimed for his face. The infinite armor slurped up the chakra around her foot, but it couldn't do anything about the physical kick, packed with quite a bit of momentum from her chakra-enhanced flight path. She was pretty smart. It was just too bad for her that he was rather proud of his physical strength. He caught her kick on his forearms by placing them over one another in a cross block. The force of her kick still managed to force him back a step, which was good on her though. Hokuto's eyes widened as he grabbed her foot. She quickly made that hand seal she and her teammates used to initiate their jutsu, and purple chakra formed into ropes on her back a moment later and lashed out at him, only to be devoured by his armor. Then with his grip on her foot, he pulled and spun around, before slamming her into the heartwood of the tree. The bark cracked from the force of the slam and Hokuto cried out in pain, before slumping to the branch base he stood on as he let go of her. So you're the strongest on this team, huh? Daiki mused, he hadn't been expecting that. But then again, one of them was a no-name and the other he remembered having his body give out beneath the star chakra training, while Hokuto herself seemed to be going strong. Either way, he'd seen enough now to get a good feel for how they manipulated their star chakra. He had a good idea how to go about recreating the mysterious peacock method now, once he got around to actually using the chakra himself. The first was already at the barest amount of chakra left before chakra exhaustion, so Daiki left him and turned his attention to the dull purple-haired boy. He had the highest and purest concentration of the star chakra due to it polluting his very body. Wait, Hokuto gasped from behind him, stopping him in his tracks. He looked over at the girl to see her feebly reaching into her equipment pouch and pulling out a familiar light-colored scroll. If I give you our heaven scroll, will you leave us alone? That was the smart move to play right now. Offering him the target of the exam and giving up her team's chance to pass in return for him leaving them alone. Sadly for her though. I've already got what I need to pass, Daiki shrugged. I targeted you guys specifically because I wanted to get my hands on some of your star chakra. Like I said a minute ago, I can make some decent use out of it. But don't worry, I'm not gonna kill you guys or anything like that. Honestly, you should be thanking me. Hokuto gaped at him. Thank you, for attacking us. More or less, but more on the side of me saving your teammate's life. Daiki grinned at her and reached down, grabbing the purple-haired boy by the collar of his jacket and lifting him up. After all, that special training you guys do around your little meteorite back in your village, it's killing you guys, he revealed, before reaching over with his other hand and pulling up the boy's jacket to reveal his lightly muscled, yet rather thin torso, and the deep, purple glowing flame-like markings spread all over his stomach and chest. What is that? The older girl went wide-eyed, before biting her lip, coming to a realization herself. Is that star chakra? It is, isn't it? I can feel it. There's a reason your third Hoshikage banned the star training in your village, you know, Daki helpfully informed. It makes your chakra much stronger and grow rapidly, but, in the process, most of you going through the training will die. These markings on his body. It's chakra poisoning, specifically, a poison known as radiation. The effects of the star seep out of your chakra network into your body and attack your organs, cells and such. Even on the 1 in 1,000 chance you survive the training, your lifespan will be drastically cut short and you could die at any time. Hokuto stared at him for a moment, before swallowing heavily. If it's like that, then why do you want our chakra for yourself? She questioned. She was probably looking for any fallacy in his words, a way to deny his words. He couldn't exactly blame her. After all, he was basically telling her that their current village leader was putting them through training that would kill most of them. Because I'm amazing, Daki shrugged. I've developed a special little seal that will filter out the radiation poisoning from the star chakra, purifying it and making it safe for me alone to use. That. Hokuto bit her lip, shaking her head. How do you know all this? Why did you make a seal like that for our star chakra? How long have you been planning this? Again Daki shrugged. Actually, the seal was made for something else. You guys just popped onto my radar when I saw you were here. Nothing more, nothing less, he replied. As for how I know all this, information is power, and let's just say that I've got some very useful spies that report to me all manner of things like this. This isn't fair at all. Hokuto sighed in defeat, slumping against the branch, a bemused smile splaying across her face. Life isn't fair. Daki shrugged and proceeded to drain the chakra from the boy in his grip. He drained the boy right to the point before chakra exhaustion, and he watched as the glowing purple markings from the chakra spreading out through his body faded away, before letting the boy go and letting him slump to the tree branch again. Clearly she groaned. What am I even supposed to do with this? How should I know? Daki raised an eyebrow. It's not really my place to help you. Hokuto grimaced at his words, before gritting her teeth and forcing herself up on shaky feet. That seal you have, would it be possible to trade for it? She asked. Daki paused. Now there was a thought. He really only planned on using it for himself, but it could be very useful to have Hoshigakure indebted to him. They didn't really have anything of worth beyond the star itself though. And if she brought up what he revealed to her, to the people of her village, especially that stand-in Hoshikage fuck, she'd most likely be branded a traitor to her village. But, if it went that way, he could work with that as well. A whole minor village able to use the mysterious peacock method freely, would be very nice to have to help later on. But, a single kunoichi amped by the full star itself, who was indebted to him, might be even nicer. How about I give you the seal, and you can show off how it works back at your village? Daki mused. If your village is interested, they can get in contact with Konoha and we'll work out a trade deal. Hokuto blinked. You'd do that? She asked, surprised. Daki shrugged. Think of it as a little bit of repayment for me getting rough with you guys and taking your chakra. He replied, rather gracefully if he did say so himself. Ah, okay, the older girl nodded, before smiling brightly. So then, how do we do this? Daki resisted the urge to smirk. It'll have to go on your torso, so you'll have to take your top and any underwear you're wearing there off. He replied. Hokuto's pretty indigo eyes went wide and her cheeks flaming red. "Oh!" she uttered, surprised. There was a smile on the original Daki's face as he left the newly formed black-maned wolf summoning clan to enjoy their massive bear meal together. It was surprisingly easy to get them to agree to the summoning contract, and now they would become much stronger and smarter in the future because of it, and that wasn't taking into account them possibly getting Ninken training in the future. Now, he found himself playing spectator to Sasuke vs Orochimaru. Naruto had already returned, saved them and got his ass beat and was currently hanging like a rubbish bag pinned to a tree. He blinked, a rush of memories going through his mind suddenly, and he groaned, palming his face as blood rushed south. He could see in his mind's eye, Hokuto, the cute older brown-haired girl, topless, fair-skinned, round perky breasts a bit larger than a handful, capped with rosy little nipples, how they felt in his hands as he moved them to apply the chakra filter seal correctly, and the taste of her lips as he stole a cheeky little kiss from her once he finished applying the seal. Fucking clones. Well, at least he had quite a decent amount of star chakra to start with now, and he could definitely understand what his clone planned and passed on to him. But he put that out of mind for now, and focused on the fight going on. It was dwindling to an end now. He watched as Sasuke bound Orochimaru to a massive tree with shuriken and ninja wire held between his teeth and ran through a few hand seals. This was it. In less than a minute, Orochimaru would give Sasuke the cursed seal. Such a useful thing that he had no chance of recreating on his own, not without Jago's DNA. Honestly, the cursed seal itself provided a lot of benefits. Not only did it automatically draw in natural energy, allowing it to be passively collected and would allow someone to basically stay in sage mode as long as it was active, it also bestowed upon the user a sage transformation like Jago's. And if Kabuto was anything to go by, both nature chakra style forms, stacked together. He kind of wanted it himself. The only problem was dealing with that shard of Orochimaru's that was contained within the seal. "You wouldn't need to worry about that though," Isabu piped in. "To do it like that, the soul shard would have to enter your subconscious, which while for some people would be a very big issue, is a moot point for you when I already live in your subconscious. If you want that seal, then get it, I'll destroy the soul shard." Daki froze. "Are you sure about that?" Daki asked, voice serious. "Because if so, that changed, while not everything, a hell of a lot. Shinobi and the Chameleon clan could not teach him senjutsu. It was one of the first things he'd asked. Shinobi himself was capable of using senjutsu, but that had nothing to do with his Chameleon clan, and more to do with his father Manda's side, the Snake clan. He did not so much as learn senjutsu, as he survived it and gained access to it. After all, the way one learned senjutsu with the snakes, was not through training or being taught, it was through being bitten, injected with senjutsu, venom itself for lack of a better term, surviving and adapting. Shinobi didn't have the slightest idea of how to go about teaching him how to feel nature energy. So, unless he somehow got the toads to teach him, learning senjutsu was all but impossible for him. But the curse seal drew in nature energy. There was a slight possibility he could use it, in the place of the toad fountain oil Naruto used, expose it to his body long enough and train to feel the energy itself. For all intents and purposes, the curse seal of heaven would be a stepping stone for him, to create his very own variation of sage mode. Not toad, not snake and not whatever the hell bullshit Hashirama Senju lucked into. "You're the one well versed in seals," Isabu replied. "You should already know what happens when a living, conscious being is stuck inside a seal on someone." The subconscious acts as a bridge of consciousness for all attached to that body, and from what I gather, this Orochimaru uses to invade the bodies of others. He attacks and wrestles control of their subconscious and from there, subsumes them. Deki nodded along in agreement. That did check out. Maybe if the seal itself wasn't connected to anything, it would be different, but when it was applied to the chakra of the holder itself, the physical and mental spiritual energy of the holder, it would have a direct link to the subconscious. And made a lot of sense on why Orochimaru wouldn't mark a Jinchuriki like Naruto. To be perfectly honest, if Deki was in Orochimaru's place, he would have marked Naruto, killed Sasuke, took his eyes, took over Naruto's body and implanted the Sharingan in that new body. The drain from the Sharingan wouldn't be anything of note at that point at all, not in an Uzumaki Kyuubi Jinchuriki, born to the previous Uzumaki Kyuubi Jinchuriki and a massively powerful Kage father, having been exposed to the chakra of the Kyuubi itself since the very second he was conceived. Really, the only reason Naruto ever got exhausted at all early on, was probably more due to most of his chakra always being used to reinforce the 8 trigram seal itself and him only ever actually having access to a fraction of his total chakra, like 20% at best. Really, if there was any living person whose body he would take, it would be Naruto's. And Orochimaru wasn't an absolute retard, most of the time. The only reason he wouldn't go for such an absurdly amazing body, would be if it was impossible. Because Kurama would splatter his little soul shard. He was a pretty possessive guy like that after all. Despite his hatred currently of his situation, Naruto was his host. That went to the point where Kurama would refuse to let Naruto have Fukasaku gather nature chakra for him as well. And he did, even at this point, deep down, have a begrudging respect for Naruto. Because give the guy some credit, despite all the shit he went through with the village, abrasive as he could be, he was a generally nice, compassionate dude and he didn't let himself get weighed down like some whiny little bitch. It didn't matter how many times his face was forced into the dirt, how many times he was kicked down and mocked, he always got the fuck back up. Deki had to respect grit like that at the very least. Sasuke, in contrast, really wasn't anything all that special, not without taking into account him being a transmigration of Indra. As far as talent and ability went, compared to Madara, Itachi, Shisui, hell even Itachi's cute girlfriend Izumi who'd had her Sharingan since birth and was a Taijutsu prodigy that would make guy weep in awe, Sasuke really just didn't compare. Naruto himself even was much more of a prodigy than Sasuke in Deki's opinion. If that dude had someone willing to teach him from the get-go, the kid would have long since surpassed Kakashi even at this point. Sasuke after all, grew up with a father who while distant, did actually teach him, and Itachi, while busy a lot, did teach Sasuke as well. That, and the fact that teachers in the academy positively mooned after the guy and all ignored Naruto, even Iruka initially for the first few months he taught the class, showed how untalented Sasuke actually was. Ironically, pure talent-wise, Naruto was more like Indra and Sasuke more like Ashura. It was just the situation around the pair that made it seem like it was actually the other way around. Deki slapped his cheeks. "I'm getting off topic," he scolded himself, before shooting into the trees in a blur of speed. He'd wasted a whole 2 seconds on that thought tangent. He really needed to work on his inner monologues. You do seem to like the sound of your own voice and reinforcing how you see the world to yourself. I'd say it was an identity issue, but let me be honest, you're just a bit of a narcissist. Isabu added his 2 cents. He was actually quite okay with that. Better a narcissist than someone who lacked belief in himself. Deki replied, drawing lightly on Isabu's chakra, just enough to change his eyes and not draw on a cloak of chakra. Despite how little it was in contrast to the full thing, his speed increased noticeably, as if he was using the body flicker to speed up. There was about 2 miles of distance between him and his targets when he started moving. At his full current speed, he crossed that distance in less than 10 seconds, even without a straight path to follow. Orochimaru gave him plenty of time to arrive. The man had far too much fun playing with his prey. The Sannin himself, so invested in his target, and with Deki hiding his chakra using his eyes, didn't notice him arriving at all. Sense power in your eyes that surpasses even attack eyes. A silky, sibilant yet soft-spoken voice echoed powerfully through the forest. My name is Orochimaru. If you wish to see me again and gain true power, then survive and pass this exam, Sasuke-kun. Deki's eyes landed on his own target as he spoke. The face he wore, half melted, displaying slitted yellow snake-like eyes and a chalk-white pale face. Orochimaru formed a one-handed ram seal, and opened his mouth, his fang-like teeth growing noticeably, before his neck stretched and launched through the air so fast, Deki wouldn't have even been able to track without the Shinkugan and Isabu's chakra enhancing him. Good thing, Deki was already preparing, spreading his chakra out and running through a few hand seals. The instant his neck reached Sasuke and his teeth were about to make contact, there was a puff of smoke, and in Sasuke's place was Deki. A sharp pain lanced up through his neck, while Orochimaru blinked in confusion for all of a microsecond, before his eyes widened in shock. The confusion lasted long enough for Deki to elbow the man in the face, dislodging his teeth from his neck. You! Orochimaru hissed, before his eyes seemingly widened even further, to the point where they looked like they would pop right out of his socket. Rinnegan! Deki! He heard Sasuke shout as well, and saw his friend staring down at him from his previous position on a branch 50 feet up, Sharingan eyes wide in shock. Deki would have loved to smirk and give him some cocky line, but he couldn't. Because that was when he felt it. He felt the seal form on his neck and something spread out through his body, into his coils, and felt as his chakra coils were forced to take it in, felt as they were stretched out, wider in a sense to accommodate, growing, strengthening. Oh, I forgot something, he realized in that moment. He'd forgotten just how much pain the seal itself caused when it formed. Deki hunched, bent over and roared as liquid pain, like lava coursing through his veins, assaulted his senses. Instant regret. Isabu rolled his singular eye as his Jinchuriki screamed bloody murder in his head, keyword being inside. He was putting up a tough face and just making roaring, shouting angry sounds on the outside. That cool, composed badass look he projected all the time to the other humans, had to be the biggest lie of the century. He was a complete idiot, of the highest order. But he was an amusing idiot, and that idiot, despite all his boasting and continuously growing arrogance, was his idiot friend. It had been a long, long time since he'd had a friend. In fact, had he ever had a pure friend? Even his caretakers tasked to watch over him as a youngling, more treated him with awe and careful respect because of his father. And even his siblings weren't the most affectionate. If Isabu had his way, he'd take the fact he actually deep down liked Deki calling him Isabro to the grave. And he couldn't say that Deki didn't make life amusing as the very least. I suppose I should do my part then, The turtle Baiju amused lightly to himself, his eye landing on a small blurry humanoid figure forming bit by bit within Deki's subconscious. It hadn't been hard to track it down. After all, its chakra was more than enough to stand out when the other chakra within here was his own and Deki's. Sorry, but this is a one-room apartment, and I like my space, Isabu imparted on the fragment of Orochimaru, before bringing one of his shelled fists up into the air and bringing it down. He crushed the fragment of Orochimaru, and forced his own chakra into it, breaking it down. He heard a scream of agony come from it, but ignored it. This man wasn't exactly deserving of pity or mercy. He seared the fragment's consciousness and body out of existence, breaking it down into pure chakra, before diverting it into Daki's own chakra coils. It was a pittance compared to his own chakra capacity, but it would give a decent boost to Daki's own capacity as it was currently. The pain was almost all-consuming, and he felt his consciousness begin to grow hazy. His coils felt like they were about to burst. He was dimly aware of a shout of worry and then a hand on his shoulder. "You! What the hell did you do to Daki?" That sounded like Sasuke. No, that is not the Rinnegan. It is close, but a slight difference, and why can I not sense his chakra? No, it is not important. Ringer indeed, though Orochimaru's sibilant voice distracted echoed. Before, Kyuku, that is my gift meant for you, Sasuke-kun. It seems your young friend tried to come to your rescue thinking it a threat to you, but no matter, I have enough stored still to form another. Stand still now, won't you? Like hell. Sasuke snarled, fire style, phoenix flower jutga. The Uchiha gagged in pain. You are fast and skilled, Sasuke-kun, but you are not ready for this stage yet, the same stage your brother stands on. Orochimaru's voice floated through his ears. Then, the haze on his consciousness suddenly disappeared and his eyes snapped wide open. The pain was still there, oh god fuck was it still there, but there was also a rushing sensation, almost like pleasure. It was power. His chakra coils and capacity erupted in size and scale, and he felt like he'd almost doubled in overall capacity. And that was before a new sensation spread out from his neck and encompassing his entire body. His chakra exploded out of his tenketsu in a spiraling raging cloak of power that turned the very air into a vibrating maelstrom. There was one off thing about it though. His chakra, it was dark blue in color usually, but not now. Now, it had changed. A deep, royal purple with ebony black embers spread throughout it. Daki felt amazing. He felt strong like this, incredibly strong. The power it gave him was almost akin to one of the tails of Isabo's full-on cloak form. So this is the cursed seal of heaven. Daki clenched his fist, before whipping his head around, banishing any stray thoughts immediately. Orochimaru pulled his fangs from Sasuke's neck, allowing the boy to drop to his knees in screaming agony as the seal seared itself into his chakra network, just like Daki before him. Damn, he was too busy recovering to stop that. Oi, Snake Man! Daki grunted. How peculiar. Orochimaru took his attention off of Sasuke and eyed Daki. I cannot feel the connection to the seal on your neck, and you are using the power of it already. My, how interesting. How did you do it, I wonder? Those eyes of yours perhaps. His yellow eyes glinted with curiosity. Wrong. Daki snorted, then moved. He disappeared in a blur of speed, and Orochimaru's eyes widened slightly in shock, the pale man leaning back just in time for Daki's knee to spear through the air where his face was previously. Daki thrust his hand out, a quick force palm jutsu turning shooting him down onto the branch the man was standing on and avoiding the counter kick the man retaliated with. A sweep was stepped over, but Daki spun through it, launching himself into a roundhouse that the man couldn't simply dodge with being so close and the sheer speed he was moving at. Orochimaru blocked the blow with a forearm, but the force of it sent him skidding back. This is not the speed and strength of a genin, no, this isn't even that of a typical jonin. The man hissed in surprise. His surprise and curiosity left him completely open for the clone that burst out of the tree line behind him, bringing one of the sparking kibar blades down through his head, cleaving him down the middle. His body burst into mud. Shadow clone jutsu, and my, are those the kibar blades? Where did you get your hands on those, I wonder, child? Orochimaru hummed from above. His clone gave a yank on the handle of the blades, and they separated from his hands into the air, spinning like buzz saws and generating a massive amount of lightning chakra, and spread it to the clone as he ran through hand seals. At the same time, Deki ran through his own. He was going big with this one. As one, they both snapped around to look up at Orochimaru. Ice style, Twin Black Dragon Blizzard. Lightning style, Electromagnetic Murder. Drawing on the chakra armor over his torso, Deki punched out both fists, and from them, a pair of massive serpentine black dragons with glowing red eyes erupted, shooting through the air at Orochimaru. A split moment later, his clone thrust his palms out, unleashing a massive wave of crackling electricity, far bigger than he could generate on his own, encasing the pair of ice dragons in the current of electrical charge. Orochimaru, a testament to his status as a Sannin, leaped back blindingly fast and with a shocking distance. Deki didn't bother directing the dragons to chase him. They slammed into the place where he stood previously, before erupting, exploding outwards into a truly massive hurricane of icy black, tearing trees decades old and thousands of feet high up from their roots and sending them flying through the air as if they weighed that of a feather. The expansion and size of the jutsu was so large, it spread out and subsumed Orochimaru before the man could react himself. Deki would have got caught up in it as well, if he didn't cut his losses and run. Using all his newfound speed, he had moved and retreated, and now found himself a good mile away, watching his jutsu roar toweringly high into the air. His clone landed beside him a split moment later, Naruto and Sasuke over his shoulders, while he had Sakura under his arm. Deki, what, how? Sakura sputtered, green eyes staring at him wide-awed, even a bit horrified. In the very center, at the eye of the tornado, Orochimaru lay limp, his body sizzling, smoking and charcoaled, yet at the same time, frosted over. For all intents and purposes, he was dead. Not even he, a legendary Sannin, could take such an epically powerful jutsu and come out unscathed. Yet, the body of the snake Sannin twitched, before its mouth opened and spread wide, and another Orochimaru pulled himself free, soaked to the bone, but otherwise fine. If I wasn't quick there with the replacement, I may very well have taken some rather gruesome injuries. The snake Sannin mused to himself, idly eyeing his shedded skin. Those injuries would not have killed him, and his healing ability was such that he would have recovered from them. But what an incredible jutsu! Orochimaru licked his lips, an ice-style dragon variation. 2 at that, used in a combination lightning jutsu amplified by the kibar blades. Kyukyuku, a ringer indeed, Sarutobi-sensei. His old sensei was up to his old tricks, sending a little monster like that into the Chunin exams. And that was without taking into account the most interesting aspect of the boy. Those eyes, they were red initially, some form of Daojutsu Kabuto had informed him before, but then, those purple rings surrounding them, they looked just like the Rinnegan. Perhaps a precursor. He mused in thought. Like the Sharingan came before the Mangekyo Sharingan, possibly. If so, it makes sense how he cut the connection. Pain has a jutsu to absorb the very soul of a target through touch. It would make sense for the eyes that evolve into the Rinnegan itself to have access to such a jutsu, he thought. How fascinating. Disappointing in a way that his jutsu would be useless for taking such a body because of it, but fascinating nonetheless. Gaara will not be enough for dealing with this one. Orochimaru crossed his arms. He would need to be dealt with some other way. Perhaps Kimimaro-kun would be able to keep the boy busy. It would no doubt cost the leader of his Sound 5 his life even if he did manage to win. But, such was life. He paused as he felt a familiar chakra rushing his way, a smile blooming across his cheeks. QQQQ Orochimaru chuckled to himself, well, a teacher always has time for his first student, no Anko-chan. He had enough time to see how his old apprentice was doing these days he supposed. Daki stared out over the destruction his jutsu wrought, a frown on his face. Orochimaru was well out of range of them now, he could still see the man though thanks to the Shinkugan. He pulled that fucked up replacement of his and got rid of the injuries on his body he grimaced. It was fucking disgusting to watch a man regurgitate an exact copy of himself, then watch his original body melt into slime or something like that. But, it was gratifying to know, he was indeed capable of dealing such high amounts of damage to Orochimaru without slipping into his tailed cloak forms. Granted, that combination jutsu was probably the most powerful in his arsenal by a wide margin. It was a literal pair of lightning-enhanced ice dragons that exploded into a giant freezing hurricane after all. But, it was still very nice to see the fruit of his efforts. He's talking to himself. Daki noted after a second. The snake Sannin was literally musing out loud to himself about Daki. Granted, he was probably feeling safe that nobody was around him right now and had no idea that Daki could hear him thanks to his eyes. He thought the Shinkugan was a precursor to the Rinnegan. Probably because of Isabu's eyes overlapping mine because I used some of his chakra. Daki bit his lip. The thing was, Daki honestly couldn't say it wasn't either. Because, the Rinnegan was an evolution of the Sharingan. And the Shinkugan really did seem like a fusion of the Bakugan and Sharingan. It might very well be possible for his eyes to evolve into the Rinnegan, then again, for it, I'll need the Sage's chakra. Madara's eyes evolved from his own chakra mixing with Hashirama's. Enough chakra from Naruto and Sasuke might work too. He cut his thoughts off as he heard the next words out of Orochimaru. Gaara will not be enough for dealing with this one. Ah shit. Which meant the man had already decided that Daki was someone he needed to plan around and have someone on hand to deal with him. That could range from Kabuto or Kimimaro, to the snake Sannin bringing some fucking crazy powerful dead kid back with Edo Tensei and sicking him on Daki's ass. Sasuke-kun. Sakura's voice broke Daki out of his observing the snake Sannin, as his Uchiha friend, even unconscious, started to howl from his clone's grip. His clone looked him in the eye and grimaced, we need to go find somewhere for these guys to lay low for now. He said. Daki nodded, let's go then. He agreed. Jerking his head, Daki beckoned his clone to follow him, before taking off through the treetops. Daki, wait. Sakura protested from where he was carrying her, we need to help Sasuke-kun, and that crazy guy did something to Naruto as well. There's nothing we can do for Sasuke right now. Daki shot her down instantly, as for Naruto, I'll take a look at him when we have a safe place for you guys. He'd been watching the fight from afar with his eyes, so saw how Orochimaru manipulated his chakra to use the 5-element seal, and if he examined it on Naruto himself, he was quite sure he could undo it. And perhaps learn how to apply seals with his chakra alone in the process while he was at it. What do you mean? Sakura asked worriedly, what did he do to Sasuke-kun? And you for that matter, what is with those weird markings on you, and your chakra? It was completely visible a minute ago when he bit you. I've never seen chakra so powerful before. Just wait until she saw Naruto go into a tailed cloak for the first time then. It's a seal, specifically a curse seal created by Orochimaru. Daki saw no harm in explaining it to her. He already had a few excuses planned for his knowledge on it now. It gives the user a power boost. In the process, Orochimaru uses the seal to make the user dependent on it, addicted even, and then uses it to take over the body of the one he marked with it. Take over the body. Sakura sputtered in shock. He wants Sasuke-kun's body. Why? For the Sharingan obviously. Daki rolled his eyes. There's only two Uchiha alive now, Sasuke and his brother Itachi, and Itachi is too strong for Orochimaru to target with his seal and steal his body, so he came after Sasuke, who's much weaker and more vulnerable. Oh! Sakura uttered, before pausing for a moment, then but wait, what about you? Can't he take your body now? And you still have those marks on you right now? He did indeed. Daki was keeping the curse mark activated to get more of a feel for it right now, and just in case Orochimaru came after them again. If he did and pushed the issue, Daki wasn't going to hold back. He was going to go full-on full-tailed cloak alongside the curse seal of heaven and mince meat him, even if he had to tear down this entire forest to finish him off. It's a lot more complicated than that, Daki explained. He basically puts a piece of himself in the seal, but I have a kind of special technique that let me kill it while it was connected to my body, so I can draw on the seal freely and use its power. Sasuke doesn't, that's why he's fell unconscious. Like a bloodline? The pink-haired girl asked. Something like that. Daki evaded, pausing on a branch as they arrived in a wide clearing. There was a large tree with the base hollowed out, looking like a large cave opening and with enough foliage around it, that hiding there would provide enough cover to keep out of sight for the most part. The sound team were probably on the search for Team 7 right now, as was their mission. Should I deal with them or let things play out, he wondered, hopping down into the clearing. He could deal with them easily. They were pretty trash, to be honest. Even with their augmentations, they got held off by Sakura of all people for a time, even 3-on-1. But it was a pretty pivotal moment, mostly for Sakura herself to shape herself up and take things seriously. You guys can rest here for now, Daki told her as he landed and carried her into the tree hollow, followed by his clone, who laid Naruto and Sasuke down gently. He set Sakura on her legs, but the girl's legs immediately went limp beneath her and she slumped to the ground. Sorry. She apologized, giving him a brittle smile. I can't feel my legs, she admitted, a shameful expression appearing on her face. Thanks for carrying me as well, even though I, smell. He'd been ignoring the fact she reeked of piss. She'd wet herself in terror when Orochimaru unleashed his killing intent. Which was actually still better than what Sasuke did. She, at least, managed to speak out initially and deride him for being a coward and spur his fighting spirit. Don't worry about it, Daki waved it off. It didn't bother him. He was used to smelling worse, like charred and crispy corpses and the dead that just voided their bowels. A little pee didn't faze him. Most would have the exact same reaction, worse even in your place, he assured her. Not you though, she pointed out, or Naruto either. I was completely useless during that fight. Say what you will about Naruto, but he's not a coward. Daki smirked, and decided to lighten the mood a little, and as for me, I'm just built different and I'm totally amazing. It's why I can compliment you on that perky round ass of yours and not be afraid of any of taking a punch to the face like Naruto if he did anything like that. Her cheeks pinked at his words, but surprisingly, she didn't glare at him. The pink-haired girl just sighed. You're a real pervert, huh? Sakura sighed, shaking her head, and to think, I thought you were actually real cool before. I'm the coolest guy there is, way cooler than Sasuke for that matter. Deki snorted, turning away from the girl and making his way over to the downed forms of Naruto and Sasuke. He met his clone's eyes and broadcasted a message straight to his mind. Go, make another clone and study the seal, he ordered. His clone nodded, and promptly left the tree hollow and disappeared in a blur of speed. You wish you were as cool as Sasuke-kun, Sakura refuted. Wait, where's your clone going? To scout the perimeter, he replied, crouching down over Naruto and lifting his jacket and mesh armor up and baring his torso. Blondie was decently ripped, was shorter, but stockier than Sasuke and had a noticeable six-pack. Good on him. And Sasuke isn't cool at all. Hell, he doesn't think he's cool. Only immature people find that whole silent, brooding edgy thing cool. Fuck, Naruto's cooler than Sasuke. He laughed lightly. Naruto was loud, proud and unashamed of who he was, abrasive and annoying as he could be. That was way cooler than someone trying to be something they were not. Sasuke was only the way he was. Because of his clan, he was nothing like that before. Sasuke was actually a shy little broken dork at heart. Sakura was struck silent by his words for a moment, and Deki pressed his hand against Naruto's stomach, channeling chakra through his body and through the seal he knew was there. A moment later, the seal on his stomach appeared and Deki actually found himself gaping at it in awe. Immediately he could see just from a glance, that the 8-trigram seal was like a work of art. The idea behind it was, while not simple, something he should technically be capable of himself. It was a layering of 2 4-symbol seals together, to create an 8-symbol seal. But the sheer quality of Minato Mikazu's 4-symbol seals put his to shame. It was like comparing the Mona Lisa to a toddler's scribbles. And that was before going into how he merged them. In a way, it was akin to someone taking the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper and merging them seamlessly together, to the point where Mona Lisa was there, as a natural part of the Last Supper. It was an absolute beauty of a creation, beyond anything his current skill would even come close to allowing him to replicate. It was because of the sheer masterful artistry in the 8-trigram seal though, that made the 5-element seal applied by Orochimaru onto Naruto's stomach stand out so blatantly. It was just so utterly crude in comparison that it really couldn't be hidden at all. As if some stupid little disrespectful punk-ass little bitch took a marker and drew a cock on the Mona Lisa's cheek. It was literally almost appalling to Deki's senses to see the seal on Naruto's stomach, besmirched by something of so low quality. He was affronted. Hell, it actually kind of made him angry. Somehow, he just noticed, seals had become something that he'd begun to take pride in and respect the power and creation of. Maybe he should be a bit thankful for it though. Because it was so crude in comparison, the mechanics of it stood out all the easier for Deki to notice, especially since the seal was in effect. If he saw outside of action and just how it was supposed to work, it would probably be a bit harder for him to decipher. Or he could just be reading too much into it. Orochimaru was clearly a hack when it came to the sealing arts. A complete poser. An utter plebeian. Let's try this out. Deki thought, holding his right hand up, fingers set in a claw-like motion and focused his chakra into the tenketsu on his fingertips. I'm immature. Sakura sounded ever so shocked behind him. It was kind of interesting actually, how carefree she more or less was. In the other timeline, she'd be worried sick about Naruto and Sasuke, standing guard over them while they rested until she was exhausted and falling asleep at her post. Here, she was much more relaxed. He supposed it was thanks to his presence. Dreadfully so in romantic taste, he absently replied, a light smirk appearing on his face and deciding to push her buttons a bit, get her fired up. Physically, you've got a bit of growing to do still for sure, but that ass though, damn girl, you got it going on. How am I immature compared to a complete pervert like you? Sakura gobbled at him. Well, to be honest, I'm not a pervert, I'm just a connoisseur of the female form and am kind enough to share my wisdom with the world, he replied. You on the other hand, think you're in love with Sasuke despite knowing nothing about him and have very immaturely deluded yourself into painting an image of him that is nothing like him. And where would you base that off of? Sakura sounded angry now. She began speaking again, but Daki cut her off. All right then, here's two simple questions. What is Sasuke's favorite food and his preferred type of girl? These would be simple enough to hammer home what he wanted to say. What? Sakura stopped, confused before huffing. That's easy, his favorite food is red bean paste and he likes long hair girls. Wrong, so wrong. Daki was actually surprised by her answer, so much so, he found himself laughing. Mostly because red bean paste is Naruto's favorite food alongside ramen, Sasuke's is tomatoes, and he doesn't have a hair length preference, he's just into older, mature girls, preferably with big tits. At the very least, he'd definitely noticed Hinata's tits and had paid attention to said subject when he brought it up during their training. He looked over his shoulder to find Sakura gaping at him, emerald eyes wide, mouth hanging low. For the record, I do like long hairs girls and you have gorgeous ass hair. He complimented. He had nothing against short hair, just had a preference for longer. It was good to hold on to, like a leash and all that. Right, this should do it, he thought a second later as he finished preparing the chakra in his fingertips. Dark purple and black chakra burned like embers over his fingertips and he brought it down atop Naruto's stomach, pressing against where Orochimaru's fingers had jabbed into him previously, and injected his chakra into the seal, 5-element seal, release. He manipulated his chakra through the seal, and felt it click, unlocking, and before his eyes it disappeared. A wide smirk appeared on his face. Get on my level, snake scrub. Daki smirked widely and wildly, bringing his fingers up and channeling chakra through his fingertips again and watching burning embers of chakra flicker over them. Through unlocking it, he'd learned everything he needed to apply it himself. Sasuke-kun likes big boobs. Sakura's voice murmured behind him, sounding horrified. He looked over his shoulder again to see the pink-haired girl was cupping her rather meager chest and looking rather lifeless. Oh right. She looked like the whole world was falling apart around her just from that little tidbit of information. Oops. Daki honestly didn't know whether he should be flattered or not, that his presence here with Sakura and her unconscious teammates completely changed up the very feeling in the air around her. There was no desperate resolve formed here while she stood guard over her teammates to protect them, because he was here, which he supposed made sense. Sakura, after all, just bore witness to him driving off Orochimaru. Why would she have to fear any run-of-the-mill Genin coming for her and her teammates, when he was around? He honestly didn't know if it was really a good thing or not. Sure, it was a pretty nice feeling for her to find him that reliable, but at the same time, was he not getting in the way of her growth? At the same time though, Naruto and Sasuke are already different from the other timeline, both are stronger. Daki grimaced a bit at the thought, because if anything, he thought that maybe Sakura was actually weaker than her counterpart. From what he gathered from Sasuke, Naruto seemed to be putting all his effort into keeping up and they sparred constantly during team meetups with Kakashi overseeing them and taking up much of their training time there, leaving Sakura to the wayside. So Sasuke getting stronger from fighting Daki all the time, caused Naruto to get stronger as well, trying to keep up, and they both had learned the Earth style, barrier jutsu, though Naruto seemed to be the one using it a lot and not Sasuke. Daki had barely ever seen the Uchiha boy use the jutsu. Fucking Kakashi, couldn't he like toss the girl a genjutsu or something? Shaking his head, Daki put them out of mind and turned around from Naruto and Sasuke and sat cross-legged in front of Sakura. Yeah, from what little I've managed to get out of him, he doesn't really care about hair length and has a preference for big tits, he said, before a thought came to mind, of when he needled Sasuke a few weeks ago about any girls that caught his mind. The one name he'd let slip had quite surprised him. The only one he told me that caught his eye was a woman you guys met on your mission to Wave, named Tsunami. At the time, when Sasuke revealed it, Daki had gotten a real good laugh, teased the Uchiha about being a MILF hunter and everything. He hadn't gotten the joke until he explained what MILF meant to him. Sasuke then refused to speak to him for the next 2 days. Tsunami-san. Sakura's eyes went wide in shock and she sputtered, but she's in her 30s and has a child. There's a certain appeal to an older, mature woman. Daki shrugged, more than one actually depending on one's general interest, but as far as Sasuke said, she was quiet, demure, was helpful and kind, wasn't a bother like he claims you and Ino are whenever you gush over him. She apparently has some nice big breasts and is beautiful. A bother. Sakura repeated lowly, biting her lip. Sasuke-kun had called her annoying before, a few times, less than a week ago, even when they were given the registration forms for the Chunin exams. He'd called her annoying then, and claimed she was weak, far weaker than Naruto even after she asked him out on a date. That had stung fiercely, but now, she couldn't even deny it. Naruto had fought that Orochimaru off for a bit, even injured that humongous serpent he was riding on. Before Orochimaru beat him down while she and Sasuke cowered from the man. Cha! I'll show him a bother, her inner self raged. Sakura cringed, ignoring her. Her chest hurt. But she found she couldn't refute what was said to her. Sasuke-kun more often than not turned up to their team meetings beaten, bruised and bloody, with a satisfied smirk on his face. From training with Daki. Daki was probably the person Sasuke-kun was closest to, beyond maybe Naruto. As much as they argued, Sasuke-kun and Naruto always seemed to be attached at the hip during team meetings and missions. She was always left behind. If Naruto didn't constantly pester her for dates and the new revelations she just got about Sasuke-kun from Daki, she might have suspected something more was going on there. Well, all that and she can cook as well. Sasuke seemed to think you're a horrible cook. Daki shrugged and Sakura felt another metaphorical arrow pierce her chest. Just stick her over a campfire at this point. She was done, though. Sasuke's just into that traditional shit, being an Uchiha and all, and honestly, I feel like a lot of the traits he feels are best in a woman are just because he idolized his mother. Damn mama's boy, cha, her inner self spat. Her lips quirked for all of a second before she remembered how far that stacked the odds against her. Her breasts weren't going to balloon in size just because she wished for them to. Though maybe she could change her attitude Either way, romance is the last thing on Sasuke's mind anyway. Daki broke her from her thoughts with a shrug of his broad shoulders. Besides, he has trash taste in women unlike me. The most I've seen out of you in regards to romance, is you commenting on how much you like my ass. Sakura deadpanned. Daki grinned at her, all teeth. You have a great ass. Best of our graduating class, he unashamedly shot back. Besides, I'm pretty sure I complimented you on your hair and eyes as well. Despite herself, Sakura felt her cheeks heat up a bit at his blatant admission. "You're such a pervert." She sighed, but felt her lips quirk up just a little bit regardless. "I just know what I like and I'm not afraid of saying so." The boy shrugged bluntly. He was like that, all upfront and blunt. He had no tact at all in this case. But she couldn't deny that his words made her feel better. Especially since Daiki was definitely very handsome himself. His was a handsomeness that was different from Sajuke-kun. Sajuke-kun was beautiful, a beautiful person if there ever was one, and had all the bearing of a tragic prince right out of a fairy tale. Daiki on the other hand, he was broad and muscular, tall and strong. He had a wild air about him that just enhanced his looks, that all but screamed, "Bring it on!" As if challenging the world itself. Daiki was far more humble in his handsomeness, there was no doubt, but his muscles and frame aspired a sense of safety that she could see the appeal in, and he was far more raw than Sajuke-kun, more open. If she had to compare them in just a few words, Sajuke-kun was like a full moon reflected on a calm water surface, while Daiki was like a gargantuan predator roaring his challenge to the world. Both vastly different, so different they couldn't even be compared properly, but yet, majestic in their own different ways. "And what you like is my ass," Sakura replied to him, forcing a deadpan look on her face. "And the floor is made of floor," he smirked back, before suddenly standing up and making his way to the front of the tree hollow and peering out. Her heart almost leapt into her throat. Are you going somewhere?" Sakura asked, the air changing around them almost instantly. "I'll have to soon," Daiki replied without turning around. "This is an exam, you know. And beyond that, I need to make sure the Hokage knows about Orochimaru being here." Sakura froze. That was right, Daiki was part of the exam as well. He had to finish and pass himself. If he was stuck looking after them, he wouldn't be able to do so. And then there was Orochimaru, as he said. "What about us?" She bit her lip. "If another team attacks, I won't be able to beat them and protect Sajuke-kun and Naruto." "You can come with me if you want," Daiki shrugged and looking over his shoulder to look her in the eye, "but if you do, you'll probably be disqualified from the exam." Sakura froze. She personally wouldn't mind giving up here and now, there would be way more chances to become Chunin in the future. But what about Naruto? And Sajuke-kun? Would they see it the same? This exam was important to them, beyond important. Naruto needed to become Chunin and get stronger for that silly dream of his, and Sajuke-kun always wanted to get stronger and fight strong opponents. She didn't know why exactly, but she had an idea. "My name is Sajuke Uchiha. I hate a lot of things, and I don't particularly like anything. What I have is not a dream, because I will make it a reality. I'm going to restore my clan and kill a certain someone." His voice drifted in her ears. From back then, on that very fateful day they became the three-man cell Team 7. "Is this a choice I can make on my own?" she fretted. "This is your call, Sakura," Daiki said. "Sajuke and Naruto are down, so you're calling the shots here. If you want, I'll get you guys to the tower safely." It was all on her then. Suddenly, it felt like a heavy pressure was pressing down atop her shoulders, rooting her in spot. Her thoughts raced. Going with Daiki was the safe option. She would be safe, as would her teammates. She wouldn't need to worry. "But I can't, I'll stay," she decided. Weak as she was, there was some things she just couldn't abide by or be cowardly about, and she couldn't trample on and betray the dreams and aspirations of her teammates. "Oh." Daiki's eyebrows rose, and his eyes regarded her with an almost piercing look that she couldn't describe, Before slowly, a smirk spread across his face. Well, you definitely need a pretty sturdy backbone to carry all that ass around. She gaped at him, before growling, you pervert. Sakura huffed in accusation. The tense air was completely broken. Everything was really serious there, and then you bring it back to my ass. And you called it fat even. My ass isn't fat. Yeah, it is. Daiki shrugged unrepentantly. Oh well, it's on the way there, which is great. A nice big round ass is great on a girl. A fat ass was a good thing for a girl. Anyway, if you're gonna stick around here, I suppose I can leave you with a little bit of help, Daiki mused, turning around fully and walking back over, kneeling down in front of her. Let me see your hands, I wanna try something. Why? Sakura asked, brows furrowing in suspicion. You're not gonna do something perverted, are you? Daiki gave her a dry look, as if she was the one that said something stupid here. You realize I've been playing it up, right? Because it gets a reaction out of you. He deadpanned, before smirking. Besides, if I was gonna do something perverted, I'd have told you to turn around, then squeezed your ass. Turn around. Let's see if he's all talk or not, cha. Sakura sighed, to think she really thought he was super cool before after he defeated Sasuke-kun and during the mission to Waterfall. He was just a super strong, perverted idiot. All right, fine. She relented and held her hands up to him. Daiki rolled his eyes at her. I'm trying to do you a favor here, you know. He pointed out. Oh, right, she had forgotten, so caught up in the perverted banter he was unashamedly throwing around. Sorry. She apologized, face flushing. He just rolled his eyes again, before reaching over and placing his palm over the top of her right hand. She was about to ask what exactly he was doing, when she felt a warm, powerful chakra spread over her hand and saw a purple glow emanate from his palm. She felt something spreading out over her hand, threading between her fingers and going down into her palm. Daiki pulled his hand back a moment later, and to Sakura's astonishment, there was black markings over her hand now. It started at the back of her hand from a single diamond-like mark, branching out into multiple strands that looped elegantly over her knuckles, circled her finger bases and disappeared down into her palm, forming another diamond-like shape in the middle of it. What is this? Sakura asked. She knew it had to be a seal of some kind, which she had no clue, but since when could someone apply such a thing without ink of some kind? Nice. It worked. Daiki pumped his fist into the air happily. You know my force palm jutsu? He asked. Yeah. Sakura nodded. Of course she did, it was what he used to defeat Sasuke-kun. Yeah, well this seal will let you use a jutsu like that. You'll just need to channel your chakra through the seal I put on you to do so, Daiki informed. You aren't quite built like me, so I put it around your knuckles to use through a punch and make it easier on you, and you already know how to use explosive notes, so the trigger will be easy for you to get down since it's based on that. Sakura's eyes widened. Isn't that like your personal jutsu? She asked, shocked. And he was just giving it to her. She bit her lip, wanted to refuse the generosity, it was really too much, but forced herself not to. With Daiki's jutsu, she would definitely be able to protect them, for sure. Kind of, it's a bit different if the same applications. Instead of the force palm jutsu, this would be the shockwave fist jutsu, Daiki explained, taking her other hand and repeating the same thing to apply his seal. Don't go using it willy-nilly though, your arms won't be able to handle the kickback. Even I could only use it sparingly at the time I fought Sasuke back during that first time. Right now, a few uses of it will probably break your arms, so make it count. Sakura swallowed heavily, but nodded. All right, got it. The pink-haired girl said. She had to pick the time she would unleash the shockwave fist jutsu wisely, because she was too weak to use it properly without it being a double-edged sword. Moments later, he was done and stood back up, dusting himself off and preparing to leave. On instinct, Sakura wrapped her arms around the boy, hugging him. Thank you. She whispered gratefully, expressing her gratitude. Not only for the seal and jutsu, but helping them, driving off Orochimaru and more. If he wasn't there, who knew what that freak would have done to them? It's fine, he waved her off. Besides, I've already got my payment in my palm. Sakura blinked in confusion. You'll pay me? She eeped, not finishing her sentence as she felt his fingers cup her backside through her shorts. On instinct, she pulled away from him before growling and swinging a fist for his face, righteous feminine fury driving her. Her fist met air as Daki sidestepped and spun around her and she yelped, jumping lightly, an echoing clap resounding through the forest as his palm met her backside in a cheeky spank. She whirled around on instinct, only, he wasn't there, and then she jumped as another spank clapped against her other ass cheek. Daki! Sakura shouted, face burning red as she whirled around again, only he wasn't there. Her hands went to her backside instinctively to protect it from another grope or spank, only she felt nothing. Daki's boisterous laughter echoed through the forest above. It seemed he had left. Sakura sighed, that damn pervert. She complained, shoulders slumping and sliding down to her knees. Despite that though, she found a small smile splaying across her face and she just sat there like that for a few moments, before remembering where she was and slapped her cheeks. Focus, I need to build some traps just in case, she told herself, and the pink-haired girl forced herself to her feet. Daki had a massive grin on his face as he sped away from Sakura and her unconscious teammates, ascending up higher and higher into the tree line out of sight. He stopped for a moment once he was out of her viewing range and eyed his hand, idly squeezing it and remembering the feel of her soft, pliable, perky ass and the way it bounced back against his squeezing and that jiggle it had. Damn, just damn. Her ass was already pretty damn big, but give her a year at most and some proper hardcore training and she would have one crazy ass bubble butt. She'd have a dump truck among dump trucks. She'd well surpass the ass of Kuinai. Wonder whose ass is better, hers or Tenten's? Daki mused. He'd not gotten a feel for Tenten's yet, but the older girl definitely had a grade derriere herself for sure, superior to Hinata's even and Kuinai's if he was not mistaken. He'd definitely have to compare one day. For now though, I've got something important to do. He shook his head and continued on. He was making his way towards the clone he'd sent off a while back. The clone wasn't actually far off and just within the general perimeter and out of sight high up. He reached him just a few moments later, landing on the branch, finding his clone shirtless, with another clone having been formed and poring over the cursed seal on his neck. Hey boss. He was greeted by a pair of nods. Daki nodded back. Find anything? He asked. The non-shirtless clone grinned at him. Oh yeah, it wasn't all that hard to decipher, especially with what we know, he replied. I can see why Jiraiya and the like would have been confused though when they had no idea what Orochimaru was doing with the seals in the first place. Oh. Daki hummed in interest. How so? The beauty of it is in how simple it is, boss. His clone grinned wider as he began explaining. It's just like our 4-symbol seal, a seal specifically made to contain a chakra entity. The thing is, it doesn't even come close to the 4-symbol seal, it's completely trash in comparison. Like, I bet even Gaara's seal for Shukaku is better than this thing. On top of that, because the shard of Orochimaru was basically formed through senjutsu. I'm thinking, nobody else could understand what was going on or do anything about it, barring maybe Jiraiya. Now that he said it like that, had Jiraiya even looked at Anko's curse seal before? He didn't remember any mention of it or anything like that. Surely he did, though. It would be stupid for him not to have been called in to do so. Then again, Jiraiya wasn't a master of senjutsu either and had no knowledge of jugo, so he could have easily just missed it all as well. Wait, Deki blinked, a thought coming to him. If it's based on that type of seal, can't we use the 4-symbol seal as a basis to upgrade it? His clone finished with a knowing look. I definitely think we can, and if I'm right, it should amp up the speed it draws in natural energy, and besides that, you're missing one thing as well, boss. And what's that? Deki asked, raising an eyebrow in curiosity. Increasing the rate the seal could draw in natural energy itself was an amazing boon in of itself. The seal is empty now without the Orochimaru shard. His clone's grin turned wild, before he dismissed himself in a puff smoke. Memories submerged into Daki's mind and his eyes widened as he learned all his clone had of the seal and the possibilities he had come up with. I see, his eyes lit up with realization. He could store the star chakra within the cursed seal, after augmenting it with the 4-symbol seal and the chakra filter seal, and set it up to draw natural energy into the star chakra itself to help it grow and then filter through into his own coils like Isabu's chakra. Not only would that increase and enhance his chakra reserves, but drawing on the curse seal actively, would give an even bigger boost. Especially if once he got his hands on it, he added the stone of Jelal in there as well. Laughter erupted from Daki's throat and echoed ominously through the forest, even as his first clone stood up and approached Daki himself to help him with upgrading the original seal on his own neck. For all he made out that improving upon the cursed seal was simple, and not all that complicated sounding. It actually kind of was. Applying the chakra filter seal and 4-symbol seal wasn't a problem in of itself. It was connecting them to the curse seal itself that was, and tidying up the connection channels. All in all, it took multiple hours of work to get it done. By time Daki's clone finished up with the seal on his neck, the sun had long since fallen and they were into the wee hours of the night, or rather, early morning. It was kind of boring actually. All Daki had for passing the time was staring straight ahead, and while he could see the entirety of the forest in any one direction with his Shinkyugen, there wasn't exactly much to focus on in the direction he was looking. Only Team 7, and they weren't exactly a barrel of fun right now. Naruto and Sasuke were still unconscious, being fretted over by Sakura, whom had, immediately after Daki left them behind, began to set up traps. He couldn't even train his chakra control or anything like that, because the seal being refined was connected to his chakra network. Beyond that, the most entertainment he had was listening to the rumbling roars and snarls of the giant beasts inhabiting the forest itself and the screams of pain and terror of other competitors in the exam. He did get to see a Kumo team run into a pack of giant tigers, each not far off the size of the one he caught for his cute little apprentice Hanabi. They were torn to shreds and eaten up quite quickly. A pity, they could have perhaps known some useful lightning jutsu for him to yoink, and they were the only Kumo team in the exam too. Such a shame and a waste. His clone clapped him on the back of the head. "That's you, boss," he said, before dissipating, the memories of the clone enveloping Daki a second later, letting him know exactly what the clone did. Standing up, Daki cracked his neck and grinned. "Let's try this out then." He hyped himself up, bringing his hands together into a ram hand seal and focusing on the infinite armor on his shoulder. He focused only on the star chakra within it, and funneled it out into the air, holding it there, a sphere of light purple flame-like chakra forming in the air in front of him. Then, he focused on the cursed seal, specifically one of the functions of the four-symbol seal, and chains of kanji spread out from the seal itself, enveloping the sphere of purple chakra, and began draining it into the seal itself. In moments, it was done. The experience of sealing Isabu inside himself made this a simple affair. With the star chakra now within the cursed seal, Daiki drew on the power of the seal itself, and felt as the power spiraled through his body, strengthening him. Oh, this is good. Daiki grinned widely, sharp teeth being bared to the world. He could feel a distinct increase in the power he gained from the seal straight away compared to how it was before. It wasn't quite double the gain in strength he gained using it before, but maybe half that if he was estimating, which was still a substantial boost. And the power increase wasn't the only thing to change. He knew after all, with the dits made to the seal, that the matrix appearance of the seal itself had changed, from 3 Sharingan-like tomoes, to 3 broad bolts of lightning. The second exam had not at all been going well for Konoha Team 10. They weren't exactly the most combat-oriented team in the first place, so in general, their main plan of action was to hide out of view and ambush another team. Yes, that had been the plan. Until a massive, gargantuan black hurricane had ripped through the forest and rained strikes of lightning down all around as it passed by. The team they had been in the process of ambushing had been swept up and killed by the monstrous jutsu, and their scroll lost in the process. Guys, there's that laughter again. Choji trembled. He couldn't at all tell where it was coming from, but that terrifying laughter, they'd heard it already multiple times today, and it seemed closer than ever, echoing all around them. Damn it, get down. Shikamaru crushed, grabbing his 2 teammates and pulling them down into some shrubbery to hide out of the way. Oi, watch my hair, Shikamaru Ino huffed, before looking around. Who the hell is this guy? Every few hours we hear him laughing. Who the hell would enjoy a place like this? They'd laugh so much here. Never mind that, listen to the laugh itself, Ino. This guy sounds super evil. Choji shivered. Just the sound of that laughing voice was so terrifying it put him off food. Hell, it was so foreboding. One team that had got the drop on them earlier outright got terrified and ran away even though they had them dead to rights. Ino, can you sense this guy? Shikamaru frowned and asked. He sounds closer than before. Annoying as it was, they mainly had to rely on Ino here. As a Yamanaka she was a natural chakra sensor, but relying on her so much had drained a lot of her chakra, so she was getting lower and lower without them having a chance to rest. Gimme a second. Ino brought 2 fingers to her temple and focused, closing her eyes. Only for her eyes to shoot wide open in shock a split second later. He's right above us. She gasped, looking to her teammates in horror. Shikamaru froze, before sighing. Just our luck, troublesome, he griped. Let's just hope whoever this crazy guy is, he isn't all that good at sensing. Oh man, oh man. Choji shook his head, before swallowing and crawling forward a bit to peek out of the shrubbery they were hiding in. We have to at least see who this guy is. He was stopped by Shikamaru blocking him. Wait, let me do it, he said, understanding. He was the best on their team when it came to stealth. Crawling forward, the pineapple-haired Nara got directions from his blonde teammate and poked his head out, looking up. The Nara's eyes widened at what he saw. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. He groaned, the tension leaving him slightly at just whom he saw. What do you mean, Shikamaru? Ino hushedly asked. Take a look yourself. He replied simply. What? Ino furrowed her brows, before huffing and pulling her head out of the shrubs and looking up. "Oh, oh." Ino hummed, eyes lighting up. What do you see?" Choji asked, curiosity getting the better of the big-boned teen, and he stuck his head out, the same as his teammates, and looked up. "Hey, wait, isn't that Daiki?" "Yep." Shikamaru nodded. "Hell yeah it is." A wide grin spread across Ino's face. "Mama likey what she sees." It was indeed their former classmate Daiki Yuria, standing a few hundred feet above them atop a large thick tree branch, his torso completely bare, showing off his broad chest and muscular abs, with his powerfully burly arms crossed over his chest as he threw his head back and just laughed. So it was Daiki all along. Choji shook his head, a sigh of relief leaving him. He didn't exactly know Daiki all that well, they rarely spoke, but when they did, he was generally a pretty accommodating guy. A bit off though to see him like this. He tended to keep to himself, a lot like Sasuke and Shino actually. Why the hell is he just standing there laughing and not wearing a shirt though? Shikamaru couldn't help but wonder. He doesn't need a reason to show off muscles like that. Ino scoffed, who knew Daiki was so well built though? I'm sure I would have remembered someone like that at the academy. No. That guy's always been built like that. He wasn't as burly as he is now, but he definitely was always muscular, Shikamaru refuted, ignoring her admiration of their former classmate's muscles. Still, I don't think I'm wrong, he was the strong and silent type, remember? Standing around like this and just laughing out in the open, it doesn't feel like the guy we grew up with. I mean, we didn't exactly know the guy that well beyond the academy, we only saw what he was like there, Choji pointed out, all the tension long since having left him at this point now that he knew it was somebody he knew that wouldn't just murder them for sport. He didn't really have any friends either. How about I go ask him? Ino piped in eagerly, and you remember what Kabuto said earlier, right? Daiki is like super strong. Not so sure I believe him being stronger than Sasuke-kun, but he's definitely strong if Sasuke-kun himself was interested in him. I bet he'd be fine helping us get a scroll if I turn the charm on a bit. What charm? Shikamaru gave her girl a confused look. He received a backhand that smacked his face into the dirt in response. Either way, the choice was taken from their hands either way. A moment later, will you shut the hell up? A male voice barked, as a team landed on one of the branches not far away from Daiki. Ino. Shikamaru pulled his head up and glared at her. I'm already low on chakra, what do you expect? I lowered my range down to save chakra. She looked away at the accusatory look, cheeks flushing lightly. Daiki, head back and laughing heartily, froze at the loud shout. Slowly, his head lowered and he stared at the team that disrupted him. It looks like a team from the Hidden Rain. Shikamaru noted. It was a three-man cell comprised of three older males, late teens to their early 20s by his estimate, two brunettes and one with black hair. The one in the lead, the one that told Daiki to shut up, was unarmed, but the two others at his back, both had odd umbrellas hanging from their backs. Should we help him? Choji wondered. They look kinda tough, we should let things play out a bit. Shikamaru shook his head. Ino scoffed, ever the coward you two, I say we jump them from behind while they are busy with Daiki and... Who the hell do you think you're talking to, Rain Scrub? Daiki himself cut her off with a scoff, crossing his muscular arms over his bare chest. Can't you see I'm getting my celebration on? Such arrogance, as expected of a filthy leaf shinobi of the Big Five. The leader hissed, even with you being a mere brat and outnumbered 3-1, you don't show a lick of fear, pathetic. No caution at all, typical of a leaf brat that has never had to feel the hardship of we smaller na. Dude, shut the fuck up, I don't care about your tragic backstory. The rain Shinobi was shut up in return by Daki scoffing, go whine somewhere else before I shove my foot up your ass. How dare you speak to me like that? Looking down on we proud and powerful Shinobi of the Hidden Rain Village. The leader snarled, his teammates unsheathing their umbrellas and stepping up to his side when he jerked his chin at Daki. You clearly have no idea to whom you speak. A complete nobody. Daki snorted. You fool. I am the great Amaya-sama, personal student of Lord Kondakai, the right-hand man of the great Hansa the Salamander himself. The older man roared angrily, now what do you say to that, ha ha? He demanded with a laugh. This guy. Shikamaru's eyes widened at what he heard, his total bad news. His teammates looked to him in confusion. What do you mean, Shikamaru? Ino asked with a frown. Don't you know anything? Shikamaru gaped at her for a second before huffing, Hansa the Salamander, he took on the 3 legendary Sannin of our village and beat them, all S-rank and way beyond Jonin level strength like Asuma-sensei. His right-hand man has to be stupidly strong as well, meaning if this is his personal student, he has to be really strong. His teammates' eyes widened and Choji gasped, does that mean this guy is like what that Kabuto guy called Daki? A ringer for his villa? Choji didn't get to finish, because Daki barked out a laughter of amusement. Who the hell is Kondakai? Never heard of him before. He dismissed the rain Shinobi's boasts, must be a total scrub, especially considering you're still a genin at your age. The now named Amaya trembled with rage, kill him. He shouted angrily, practically frothing at the mouth in a rage. Feel the might of the rain village. Senbon shower. Die leaf scum. Senbon shower. Amaya's 2 teammates thrust up and tossed their umbrellas into the air, where they opened up and began to rotate at blinding speeds, unleashing twin barrages of senbon that blanketed the sky above in multiple thousands of needles. There was so many of them racing through the air down towards Daki that there was surely no hope he could dodge them. If such a barrage was aimed at Team 10 themselves from such close range, they'd be dead to rights and have no chance of escaping. But Daki didn't even bother attempting to dodge to Team 10's horror, and merely stood there, arms crossed and not moving an inch. All of a sudden though, a black and blue trimmed piece of chest armor appeared on his chest, a weird turtle-headed looking pauldron on his left shoulder. Not a movement made, just all of a sudden it was there, blink and you'd miss it. And at the same time, a huge shimmering barrier of dark purple spread out around him in a spherical shape. The massive barrage of senbon impacted against the barrier, a rain of tick-tick-tick sounds echoing through the forest as they failed to penetrate and fell powerlessly to the ground around Daki. Or they should have at least. From within the barrier, Daki held up his hand and each and every single senbon completely disappeared, and a split moment later, the barrier dissipated from around him, 6,537 senbon ha. Not bad, a pack of 50 of them costs 2,000 ryo around here, so that's roughly around 260,000 ryo worth of senbon. Daki for the first time since the confrontation began, uncrossed his arms to bring one hand up to his chin in thought, nodded to himself as he calculated the total worth of the senbon used to attack him. Thanks for the gift, lads. Shikamaru gaped. Choji's mouth dropped. Ino practically felt her pupils turn to hearts. That was so cool. She swooned. When did Daki get so cool on top of being so hot? Amaya screamed. How? Why? The leader of the Rain Ninja team shouted, before clenching his teeth and grinding them audibly, how dare you steal from us? Is it not enough you have ravaged our great country in your selfish wars? Dude, point your fingers somewhere else. I've never even been to Rain. Daki rolled his eyes. Besides, you're a Shinobi, get over it, you clown. That's the law of the Shinobi world. The weak die and the strong thrive. You squealing like a pig just shows your weakness. I am not weak, you damn arrogant scum. Am I a spat? I will beat you down now and show you the difference in our abilities. I shall make you bow and beg for mercy and have you return my subordinate's senbon. With a mighty shout, Amaya pushed off, shooting through the air towards Daki almost fast enough he appeared to blur a bit to the three watching Genin down below. Yet, he hit nothing but air. Daki was there one moment, not moving an inch as Amaya closed the distance rapidly. Then, just as the Rain Ninja was about to make contact, Daki was gone as if he was never there to begin with. A second later, a pair of audible thumps rang out and 4 pair of eyes whipped around to Amaya's previous position. To find both of his teammates laying face down atop the huge tree branch they were standing on, each with a single senbon buried in the back of their skulls and Daki standing between them. Well, I'm a generous guy, so I gave 2 back, but I think I'll keep the rest. Daki idly commented, before yawning, I could do with some food right about now. That, holy crap, Kabuto wasn't full of shit. Shikamaru swallowed. Daki really is as strong as he was saying. I didn't even see him move. Not even Chunin move like that. Ino shook her head, sobering up from her swooning and frowning at him. Are you saying he's as strong as a Jonin? The blonde Yamanaka asked. Definitely, that sheer speed, that barrier he pulled out of nowhere, and the way he stole those senbon. Somehow the Nara grimaced and nodded. It was so smooth and he's being so casual about it. He's totally relaxed, he's not even trying at this point. So we should totally avoid Daki then? Choji asked. Guess so. Ino shrugged. He's a fellow leaf ninja, so he probably won't go too hard on us, especially with me around. But we should get out of here right now while he's busy. We should stay here, Shikamaru refuted. If he's as strong as I think, he'll catch us if we move. Now that he's alert, he'll probably move on once he beats this guy, then we can get out of here. He got 2 nods from his teammates and they quieted down to watch what was going to happen from this point on. Amaya stared at his dead teammates before spitting. You are fast, I'll give you that, he complimented, almost serenely, calmly, just for a second before his lips twisted up into a savage snarl. But don't think for a moment you are powerful just because you managed to slay Tenji and Renji. They are mere trash lapdogs. He roared, hand whipping into his tool pouch and pulling out a scroll. You sure changed your tune quick. Daki laughed lightly. What happened to you taking back those senbon for your subordinates? He idly asked, even as he casually picked up the now fallen umbrella senbon launchers and inspected them idly. Quiet trash. Amaya spat, unrolling the scroll and tossing it into the air, summoning Great Deluge. While in midair, a massive amount of water erupted from it, enough to fill a remarkably large pond. At the same time, Amaya ran through a series of hand seals. Feel the wrath of my most powerful jutsu. He laughed, still doing hand seals. It took him a few seconds to finish with a total of 44, landing on the bird seal, water style, water dragon jutsu. The water up in the air above them compressed together, forming into a large 30 feet long, 5 feet wide serpentine dragon that tore through the air down towards Daki. It never even reached Daki though. As soon as it was within 10 feet of him, the dragon itself broke apart in a shower of rain, no longer held together, and formed puddles all around on the grooves of the tree he was standing on. Nom, thanks for the food, Daki said, while casually inspecting his fingernails for any dirt. My water dragon. Amaya cried out in shock. You call that a dragon? Daki stopped inspecting his nails and scoffed, before bringing his hands up and rushing through hand seals so fast Amaya couldn't even keep track, finishing on the rat seal in less than a second. But, for sure, he ran through much less of them than Amaya. This is a dragon. Water style, water dragon jutsu. The puddles left behind by Amaya's dragon surged up into the air at Daki's command, compressing together, forming into a dragon just the same as Amaya's. Yet somehow, despite having even less water to work with, Daki's dragon formed into a much larger serpentine beast, easily more than twice as long and wide, and formed in less than half the time. The huge water dragon roared and scythed through the air towards Amaya, huge jaws snapping open and around the man before he could react. Amaya screamed in pain as the dragon smashed through the branch he was on and dragged him down hundreds of feet to slam him into the ground. It didn't bite through him though, despite how easy it would have been, and fell apart as soon as it slammed him down into the ground. Ah! Amaya laid there, gasping, writhing in pain. Daki landed on the ground beside him a minute later, hands casually resting his pockets. See, now you have an example to follow and get better. I'm a kind guy like that, the muscular Genin mused aloud, idly crouching down for a moment and reaching into Amaya's pouch and pulling free an earth scroll. And since I was so kind and let you live after you annoyed me, how about answering a question of mine? Fuck you. Amaya spat. I will tell you nothing. I will kill you and everyone you have ever cared about. I will take all the women you care about as my personal fuck pets and breed them into submissive brood mares that will birth the next generation of Great Rain Ninja. Cool story, bro. Daki shrugged, not making a move as the man feebly rolled onto his side and pushed himself up onto his knees and slowly made hand seals, much slower than the ones he made before. Feel the power granted to me by Lord Kandakai. Amaya roared, glaring up at Daki, summoning jutsu. He slammed his hand onto the ground. Daki casually jumped back as a massive plume of smoke erupted from around them, and Team 10 bore witness to dozens of massive tentacles, each as thick as a person was wide, shooting through the air, piercing through the smoke and racing after Daki. Spinning midair, Daki avoided one trying to wrap around his upper torso. At the same time he held a hand out and a single straight sword appeared in his right hand, a fang-like spike on either side of the blade, lightning sparking into existence over the weapon. Daki swung, cleaving through one of the tentacles and landed, jumped back and avoided another before cutting clean through it. The huge tentacles were down to 10, then dozens more erupted from the smoke, blowing it away and revealing the beast that was summoned, Amaya laying on all fours atop it. It was a huge, gargantuan seashell, flaring out at the back into an almost tail-like shape with vents along it, and twin-shelled horns erupting from the highest point of the shell. Tremble in fear before the mighty Conch King, most powerful of all summons from our almighty Rain Village. Second only to the great and powerful Ibus of the Salamander clan, personal summon of Hansa Sommer himself. Amaya cackled. More and more huge tentacles erupted from the opening in the shell of the huge conch summon, so many they surrounded Daki like a wall with no openings and converged upon him. For a moment, it looked like he was done for. There was no openings for him to escape. Only for the huge tentacles to be rent asunder, the sound of thunder booming through the air. Standing in the middle, barely moved, was Daki, but now, he held a second sword that was a complete copy of the first. How the hell can that be the most powerful of the summons of rain and at the same time be second? Are you an idiot? Daki scoffed, also wrong answer dude, you're really not gonna like how I get my answers now. You've showed your hand now boy, no point bragging now. I see, your true strength lies with the blades. But that will do you no good. No physical attack can breach the impenetrable shell of this summon. Amaya ignored him and laughed, Use your Hydro Blaster Jutsu Conch King, kill him dead. The massive shell summon trembled, pulling back the remains of its tentacles into the crevice opening on the front of it, before opening wider, an orb of water shimmering into existence at the front of the beast and growing larger and larger until it was nearly half the size of the summon itself. Idiot Daki shook his head and gave a hard toss to the hilts of the swords in his hands and letting go. Yet, they did not get sent flying. Instead, they began to rotate rapidly mid-air, generating mass amounts of lightning chakra around them and fed it towards Daki, while Daki himself made a single hand seal. I'll just ignore the shell then, since you felt the need to tell me its weakness. Die. Iamar roared, and his summon shook before lurching forward, air emitting in great quantities from the vents on its tail, shooting it forward rapidly through the air towards Daki. At the same time, the Conch King unleashed its jutsu, firing it off in the form of an absolutely gargantuanly large water pressure cutter. No, you. Daki thrust both hands together, and the sounds of the world itself was drowned out by roaring thunder. A massive beam of pure electricity and force erupted outwards and meeting the huge water pressure blast. Despite the size and power of Daki's jutsu, it was completely dwarfed in scale by the Conch King's own jutsu. Yet, that did not at all stop his own jutsu from piercing right through the much larger jutsu, tearing it apart and shooting right through to slam into and right through the shell of the Conch King and out of the back. A piercing shriek erupted from the huge shelled summon, and it trembled in agony, the scent of cooked flesh filling the air as the lightning jutsu cooked it from the inside out. Even its mighty shell could do nothing against a non-physical element that slipped straight through its defenses. It fell silent moments later and went utterly still. No, no, no! Amaya screamed in horror, pushing himself to his feet. How? How? Conch King, how could you lose to this plebeian? Were you weak trash all along? He started stamping his feet. No, you're just an idiot who doesn't know how to use it. You relied on it instead of supporting it like a real summoner. Daki scoffed, his swords now just idly floating in the air beside him somehow. Now why don't you come down from there, stop your childish tantrums and stop wasting everyone's time? Everyone. Shikamaru froze. This, I refuse. Amaya screamed, reaching into his pouch on his leg, drawing 2 kunai and launching himself through the air towards Daki. I will drink from your skull. Making a single hand seal and bringing his kunai to bear, the man blasted forward, moving in a blur so fast now, none of Team 10 even saw him move. No. Daki's voice echoed simply, thrusting out hand into the air. A loud gag resounded as Amaya suddenly appeared, held helplessly in the air by Daki's hand around his throat. Even with the shunshin, you're just far too slow. Now, you brought this on yourself. The muscular leaf Genin commented, scarlet red eyes beginning to glow ominously as he looked up into Amaya's eyes. A second later, the rain Genin began to scream in pain, body thrashing wildly in Daki's grip, the 2 kunai slipping from his grasp and falling to the grass. He screamed bloody murder in agonizing pain, eyes rolling up into the back of his head. But it only lasted for a few seconds before Daki gave a jerk of his wrist and Amaya's neck bent to an odd degree as it snapped. Daki dropped the corpse to the ground a second later and hummed, "Home, not a bad haul, I guess." He mused aloud. He stepped over the corpse and walked over towards the Conch King, still silent and unmoving. As he approached it, the Conch King's shell opened slowly, trembling mightily, and a mere 2 tentacle appendages slowly rose out of it. It was preparing to fight still. "Don't worry, I won't kill you," Daki assured the summon. "The fact you stuck around to fight instead of dismissing yourself after taking that jutsu of mine head on, even though your summoners has died, is pretty awesome of you, though he was clearly not deserving of your loyalty." The tentacles froze at his words. Honestly, I wouldn't have even killed the guy if he just decided to shut up and piss off. Daki shook his head, coming to a stop a mere 5 feet from the huge shelled beast. Still, you did help my enemy and I don't usually show mercy. I'll let this go though if you hand over your summoning contract. I already have a summon clan of my own, but I'll find you a much better summoner than that trash. For a moment, the Conch King did nothing, but then slowly pulled its tentacles back inside its shell, only for one to slide back out a moment later, wrapped around a large scroll. It deposited the scroll in front of Daki. If only that guy was as reasonable as you, he wouldn't have ended up like he did. That's what happens when you wave your tragic backstory around and use it as an excuse to do stupid shit though. Daki shook his head in clear amusement. You should head back to your home now and recover. I did hit you with one of my strongest attacks after all. The Conch King shook up and down slightly, as if nodding, before erupting into a plume of smoke and disappearing, returning home. As it did, Daki placed his hand on the huge summoning scroll and it disappeared, before glancing over at the bush Team 10 were hiding beneath. You can come out now, Shikamaru, Choji, Ino, I beat up the scary rain ninja. He called over, laughter dancing in his eyes. 3 pair of eyes widened. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe the channel for more such videos. Tell me your recommendation in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching.